Where the fuck do you get the balls?
Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
What's up, everyone? A pleasant good evening, dissidents. Welcome one and all. This is the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss, here with Russell Dobular.
Hello.
Russell, my eyes. I'm all disoriented here. It's not that they're burning. You know how they get strained, you know? Yeah, this is like a reverse fisheye thing. Like when you feel like you've been looking through a fisheye lens forever, and now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, it's straight. Out. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. What do you think, everybody? We tweeted out this morning. It is the end of an era. Russell has fixed his bookshelves. Look at beautiful.
Yeah. I was actually starting to get concerned that eventually they would break. So I finally gave in. That's why the Fix the Shelves faction finally won, although they were never a plurality of the audience. The majority always wanted the shelves to stay as is, partly because they had a morbid fascination with the idea that these shelves might collapse and kill me during a show.
Yeah. Exactly.
That was part of the attraction. That was why they didn't want. But I saw through your little scheme. I saw through your trap. And I avoided it. So, look, while I was up there, I pulled down a couple things that you might enjoy. All right.
Yeah, so these things, for those who don't know, those shelves go all the way up to the ceilings, about 9 of them, right? 8 or 9 of them? Yeah. Look at that. Way up there.
That is 9 shelves. So that is one of my little mementos.
Oh, wow. There. Talk about the lib days.
Yeah, that didn't work out too well for them.
Yeah.
And my prized political possession, my autographed copy of Fear and Loathing with Hunter Thompson, and Johnny Depp.
Wow.
There is. I'm going to get it tested for Amber Heard fecal matter now.
Yeah, that's worth a lot of money. You could take that on like Pawn Stars or something. I mean, you wouldn't get top dollar there; they'd haggle you, but you'd get the fame. You know,
that you'd get the guest appearance. The last I checked, that's worth about $3,000.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I think that'd be worth quite a bit.
And I haven't checked it in a while, and obviously Hunter's not signing any more of them. So,
yeah, exactly. I see some of the people do not approve of your choice to fix the shelves. That was expressed on Twitter, too. They say, we voted. I know. What can we say? The superdelegates overrode you again. Damn it.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars were lost on the popular shelf.
Indeed. Well, folks, we have a good show for you guys tonight. We're very, very excited about this one. Some big stuff to talk about. And just as a reminder, folks, we are going to be starting this Friday our Morning Dew program. Morning Dew, live at 9 a.m. Friday morning. So we hope very much that you will all tune in. We are starting 3 shows a week this week. You guys helped make that happen. You signed up at Patreon and Substack and all the super chats. They helped make that possible. And so thank you all very, very much. We want to thank our Rumble audience growing over in there. 58 of you guys in the chat right now. Please hit that like button over on Rumble. Try to get some more people over there. But thank you for all of our Rumble audience for tuning in. And thank you guys, of course, so much for being here. Like I said, lots to cover tonight, so why don't we start out with some headlines? This was a fairly big one. You know, we've gotten a lot of bad news out of the conservative judiciary lately, but here's some good news out of the conservative judiciary. Not a Supreme Court ruling, but federal judge limits Biden officials' contacts with social media sites. The order came in a lawsuit filed by the attorneys general of Missouri and Louisiana, who claim the administration is trying to silence its critics. A federal judge in Louisiana on Tuesday restricted the Biden administration from communicating with social media platforms about broad swaths of content online, a ruling that could curtail efforts to combat false and misleading narratives about the pandemic and other issues. So you see their point of view embedded not so subtly in the opening paragraph. The order, which could have significant First Amendment implications, again, a little bit of slant there. Usually when you say something has First Amendment implications, you mean it's going to restrict First Amendment rights. You know what I mean?
Well,
that's usually how you would use that phrase.
Not at the New York Times.
No.
That's not how the New York Times uses that phrase.
It's a major development and a fierce legal fight over the boundaries and limits of speech online. It's a victory for Republicans who have often accused social media sites like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube of disproportionately taking down right-leaning content, sometimes in collaboration with the government. Democrats, on the other hand, say the platforms have failed to adequately police misinformation and hateful speech, leading to dangerous outcomes, including violence. Yeah, support.
There's like a master class in propaganda. Like just the placement gives you a signal that the Democratic position is right. Just by giving it the last word, it's sending you a subliminal message that that's the correct position.
Right, as well as the little add-on at the end, you know, leading to dangerous outcomes, including violence. Well, when they write leading to dangerous outcomes, yeah, they are technically summarizing the Democrats' position there, but because of where it comes in the sentence and in the paragraph, you can tell that is their editorial stance as well. It's not that hard to discern that.
That was the British position on pamphlets before the revolution, wasn't it?
Indeed.
Hateful speech leading to dangerous outcomes, including violence.
That's right. I'll read one more paragraph here because this is a pretty simple ruling, folks. In the ruling, Judge Terry A. Doty of the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Louisiana said that parts of the government, including the Department of Health and Human Services and the FBI, could not talk to social media companies for, quote, the purpose of urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner the removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech. Keyword there being protected free speech, which is a standard that we've always argued, that unless something violates the law, you should more or less take a hands-off approach, because we already have a system in place for determining what speech is out of bounds and what's not. That's called the law, right?
Right.
And so you have a First Amendment, you have carve-outs for extreme violations, and that's it. There's no reason to go any further, and there's certainly no reason for the government to be leaning on these companies to go any further. So we saw that take from the New York Times there. They obviously, as you can tell, disapproved of the ruling. But let's go to the TV media, shall we? Let's go to CNN. This clip is making the rounds. Thanks to our friend CJ from RBN for finding this and sharing it. We will go to this right now, folks. I'm just going to bring this up. This is from CNN today, reacting to the news.
Yes, this is a Trump-appointed judge, but this judge was confirmed 98-0 by the Senate. Just reading the words in this injunction, a, quote, massive effort by the defendants to suppress speech based on content, those are the judge's words, calling the present case, quote, arguably involves the most massive attack against free speech in the United States history, Ellie.
Yeah. It's a dramatic decision by this judge. If you read through it, he's citing to literature and George Washington and Ben Franklin. Here's what really is astonishing to me.
George Washington, Ben Franklin, those commies.
Yeah, they were
anti-American Putin puppet Russian agitators like Ben Franklin and George Washington.
Thomas Paine was the worst.
Yeah,
it was spreading dangerous misinformation, and it led to violence. You know, didn't we do a whole segment showing people cornering a female athlete in a room for 3 hours based on dangerous misinformation regarding biology? I don't see them going after that.
Here we go.
This is a conservative ideology that clearly comes through in this decision. It's a conservative political ideology, right? We saw some of the quotes questioning vaccines, questioning masks, conservative talking points. But the ruling itself is the opposite of judicial conservatism. This is one of the most aggressive, far-reaching rulings you'll ever see. What this judge is purporting to do is to micromanage, really, the day-to-day interactions between essentially the entire executive branch, all these agencies that are listed as defendants, and the leading social media companies.
I'm sorry. The judge is trying to micromanage the interactions between the executive branch and the social media companies. No, he's not. He's saying there can't be communication.
He's saying the government can't micromanage.
Right. And the social media companies. There's already been, these past few years, micromanagement between the executive branch and the social media companies. You know who's been doing that micromanaging? The executive branch. Right. That's the whole point of the ruling, is to take the executive branch out, right? Except for extreme examples, which is cited in the ruling. You know, national security, right, terrorism, they always have to make those carve-outs. And in this case, it was smart to make those carve-outs because that foolproofs it at the Supreme Court level. Obviously, Biden is going to fight this. This is going to go before the highest court in the land. And if they didn't make carve-outs for national security and things like that, it may have been struck down. So it's actually important that they put those little qualifiers and caveats in there, which they did. And so what they're saying is we don't intend to micromanage interactions. The federal government was micromanaging the social media companies. That's the whole point of the ruling. Right. All right, let's let this finish.
And in the actual temporary injunction, the judge basically says you're not allowed, administration, to talk to the social media companies about any protected free speech except for cybersecurity threats, national security threats, criminal threats. But where's the line? Who's going to police this?
You just said it, asshole. That's where the line is. You just said it. National security threats, cybersecurity threats, foreign election interference is one of the carve-outs too, right?
Well, it's also it's a very strange argument to fall back on, that it's not enforceable, so you shouldn't rule this way. But they were able to put in all of the effort to scrape through all the Twitter data and come up with these accounts with 16 followers for having disinformation, but they can't handle this. They can't handle not doing it.
Well, also, the ruling is clearly enforceable. If the ruling weren't enforceable, then the plaintiffs wouldn't have been able to gather evidence, bring the case, and win the case, right? Like, the fact that they won the case is proof that you can gather evidence of some sort of impropriety on the government's part. So if you can gather the evidence to win the case, then you can also, of course, gather the evidence necessary to enforce the ruling if they violate it. Right. So
it is just.
See, what are we doing here? Like a couple of schmucks making $100 a show. We should be on CNN. We're smarter than these people.
That's a low bar to clear.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. A little more.
Judge trying to micromanage the day-to-day regular activities of the entire executive branch. I don't know that it's actually policeable by the judge, but it's really an astonishing. I don't mean this necessarily as a criticism. This is a very activist judicial opinion.
Sarah,
all right, very good. All right, that's everything.
I love they hit all the buzzwords. It's a conservative decision ideologically, but it's not conservative in the real world because it's so activist and not laissez-faire. Well, no, actually, schmuck. If you understand conservative judicial philosophy in theory, it's to very strictly follow the Constitution and the amendments. Strictly. Now, of course, that is not as simple and black and white as they make it out to be, but that's the underlying judicial philosophy of conservatives as a rule. So to err on the side of the First Amendment strongly and to see the very clear and obvious danger, which I believe he actually articulated clearly in his decision, the threat of the government using regulation to intimidate companies, the possibility of further regulation to intimidate them into controlling speech. If you are a member of the press and you don't see how dangerous that is, you are a complete and utter fucking moron. But clearly that they are not members of the press. This is why they don't care about this. They're not journalists. They're spokesmodels. They're spokesmodels for the establishment, for elites. So for them, as you've said, that's one of your best observations. They'll never say anything interesting enough to get censored. This is why these people do not
They have
care.
no stake in it.
Right. They don't care about it. Who's ever going to send the black hoods and the zip ties are never coming for them. And they know it.
Right. Exactly. So they have no stake in any of this, really. Right?
And you also wonder if they would have covered it like this before they whacked Chris Licht. Because Licht, whatever his failings, was pushing back on this kind of very obviously Democratic bias, hair on fire kind of reporting.
Right. Exactly. Now, I know we have spoken favorably of the ruling. Obviously, I agree with the ruling, right? But I'm sorry to have to be a little bit of a wet towel here, but, for people who are overly excited about this, thinking this is a major victory for the First Amendment, in itself, I'm sorry to say it is not. It's a necessary first step in what's going to be an ongoing struggle. But the reason this in itself is not a major victory for free speech is because of what I always say. It's a quote I mentioned every show. The George Carlin, you don't need a formal conspiracy when interests converge, right? These social media companies now cannot be instructed word for word by the government. Hey, there's this tweet we want taken down. Hey, there's this video we want pulled down. Hey, there's this post we don't like, right? They're not going to be able to have that explicit, specific direction anymore, which is good. That counts for something, right? Not saying it's nothing. Mm-hmm. However, they still know how to please the powers that be. They still know how to remain on the good side of Health and Human Services, of the FBI, of, in this case, the executive branch, right? And so they know still broadly, generally, where they can and cannot go, right? And so unless and until you change the executive branch for starters, but also reform a lot of these agencies, the incentive structure is going to remain more or less what it is now, which means in the short term, you are still going to have, I'm sorry to say, rampant online censorship. So I just have to keep it real and say that the battle is far from won.
I agree with that. I thought about that. Well, okay, all of us who are building lifeboats on Rumble, are we going to end up not needing that?
Of course, no, we need it.
Yeah, no, we will, because in the end, it's going to take more than this to change the whole momentum. This is like a river flowing in a direction now. There's so much momentum that's been built up behind this censorship regime, behind the basic assumption that it is the job of unaccountable tech companies to police the internet. Otherwise, the government is coming for them. We're too far along for that all of a sudden just to stop because of one ruling. But it is going in the right direction. And I would say overall, our show tonight kind of reflects the beginning of the end, I think, of this long national nightmare of this ethos. And this is where it's very, very confusing. So we've talked about many times on the show, to know where to throw your support within the electoral system regarding people who are actually going to be in control of it. Like, yes, we're basically leaning towards Cornel West, but that's a whole other strategic concern. We don't expect him to get elected president. We expect him to help establish a challenge to the two-party system. When you talk about who's actually going to be in control January 2025, okay, without these Trump appointees, if you the court of 10 years ago, there's no doubt in my mind that this ruling would get overturned at the Supreme Court. No doubt. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that this will be upheld by the Supreme Court. So if you believe, as I do, that free speech is the right from which all other rights flow, who do you back? What positions do you back? What politicians do you back if you really believe that? Because clearly the Democratic Party is the McCarthy party of our day. When you watch that Taibbi Schellenberger hearing, it felt like 1953. It looked like a McCarthy era witch hunt against reporters. The fucking IRS went to his house that day to intimidate him. So who do you support? Who do you support? Even the argument, the Democrats have become such a danger to freedom and speech rights that even the argument, well, you got to vote for them because of the court, even that doesn't really hold up anymore. It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. Yeah, the abortion ruling is terrible. How they would rule on this is going to be a lot better than how a Democratic chosen court in this era would decide. You know, it's not the Earl Warren days anymore.
Sure thing. Russell, we're at 680 in the chat. That's your cue. 95 in the Rumble chat. Oh. You had everybody give us the alert. Thank you guys for staying on that. We appreciate that. All right, we got another headline coming up. 95 in the Rumble chat, 685 here on YouTube. Thank you guys very much for watching. Let's read a couple of super chats. By the way, I am monitoring the Rumble chat, so if you'd like to make your voice heard for a few bucks, we can read Rumble rants. I can't display them with your name on them because StreamYard does not have that technical capability yet, although they are saying they're working on a Rumble integration. But Tip Jar is out, folks, and thank you so much for being here. Pat Donahue, thank you for the €5. And by the way, Pat said on Twitter today that he's not able to watch these live streams. He always drops a few bucks in our tip jar, and we thank him for it. But you live across the pond, and so you mentioned that actually your first live stream that you'll be able to catch in its entirety is this Friday at 9 a.m., which will be about 2 or 3 p.m., if I have that right, over in your neck of the woods. So thank you, Patrick. I've been waiting for Anna's I'm leaving the left speech since her horrible empathy-free take on LA's homeless problem a while back. Well, we will get to that, my friend. You will see that first thing in the morning when you wake up. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But
we actually have photos of the new skirt.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So. Tusker unsubscribed because of the bookshelf. Yeah, we knew we were going to cost ourselves a little bit of support with the bookshelf, but safety first.
That was like the patron apocalypse, we call it.
Yeah, the patron apocalypse.
As soon as I tweeted out those fixed shelves, we lost like 30 patrons.
I know. What are you going to do? Safety first, right? Safety first. Martin, thank you for the $19.99. That's very generous of you. We appreciate that very much. And Franklin Warsham, thank you for the $5. The Supreme Court has applied the law correctly and achieved the just result 95% of the time in the last couple of years. Didn't they save us from mandates? Well, look, I mean, they are strict constitutionalists. This is the ongoing debate at the court level, right? Between people who are, strict constitutionalists and people who see it more as the sort of living, breathing document that the founders actually said it was. Unfortunately, and we got into a little bit of this on our stream with Kit and Nick and CJ on Monday for the post-duopoly show. When the government stops functioning as though the Constitution is a breathing document, when stalemate sets in and polarization becomes such that nothing can get done, that the government becomes completely paralyzed, the court is the only real vehicle for change or lack thereof that there is. Right. So that's how I would answer that one. All right. We got a few more we will get to in a few minutes, but thank you guys very much for that. I'll take this one here. Name my taco. $100 a stream. Grifters. Oh, yeah, by the way, what we're going to do, what we are going to start doing is we're figuring out the terms of how we're going to set this up. But we are going to get a little fundraiser going for our election coverage in 2024, both for the primaries and the general. We're going to try and actually hit the road a little bit. I'm fairly close to both Massachusetts and New Hampshire. New Hampshire's obviously first in the nation primary for the Republicans still, and who knows what's going to happen on the Democratic side. Things could get interesting there. So I'll probably make some trips there into New Hampshire and into Massachusetts. And we're going to put this guy, this bachelor over here, who doesn't have to be home for anybody. We're going to put him on a plane.
Footloose and fancy free.
Send this asshole to Iowa. And we're going to try to send this guy down to Texas. Maybe you can grab Kiki Friedman there. The Texas Jew boy, right? And you guys can go do some on-the-ground reporting.
With a niece.
Yeah.
Just for that, it is worth contributing to this mission. No, for real, we want to go do on-the-ground reporting in the primary states. So we're figuring out the exact way we're going to do it, but we are going to do a fundraiser. We hope you'll contribute. We want to get started on it now because obviously we want to start to book things because these states are going to book up with press when the primaries are coming up.
Well in advance, yeah. So we have basically till the end of the year to get that going. We'll have some more formal announcements regarding those plans in a little while. But right now, let's stick with our theme of media.
We know you've been hurt before. We're not like TYT and the Vanguard. You give us this money, we're actually gonna fucking.
Oh yeah, we're actually gonna do it.
Absolutely. We're not just gonna like put up a projection of New Hampshire on a green screen.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We're really gonna do it.
Didn't Zelensky do that in the beginning of the war, right? He put green screens behind them, showing different locations. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, we will have more updates on that as the calendar progresses. But let's go to our second headline of the night. Here's a conversation on the Majority Report between Emma Vigeland and Francesca Fiorentini, who, come to think of it, may be taking Anna's place sooner than later if she does bail. I would imagine Francesca's pretty high in the rankings over there at TYT. But here they are talking about corporate media and the difference between MSNBC and Fox News.
Like, the critique of corporate media, yes, you can apply it to Fox, to CNN, to MSNBC and say, these are major corporations that are in they're doing news for profit, and that creates a perverse incentive set. But then there's the massive critique about Fox News, which is separate from the overall corporate media critique, which is that they're a literal propaganda outfit. And conflating MSNBC and Fox News is irresponsible because...
How? Why? Let's see. She said because. Let's hear this.
You can the criticism of the criticism of MSNBC is that they are a corporate entity and that maybe they work too closely with some of the Democratic operatives. Fox is on another level, and I hate the false equivalence that I see sometimes online.
What do you mean it's on another level at Fox News? Who took the press secretary for the White House and gave her a show immediately after leaving the White House? In fact, that was such a quick turnaround. I'm going to go ahead and speculate that she had the MSNBC gig before she left the White House, which is probably why she left the White House. that might even be public knowledge. I don't
She
remember
was,
the
she was,
specific
a-
to
she
that.
was asked that, and she denied it.
She denied it. Okay. But she clearly left the White House for MSNBC. And yeah, I know they're a little too cozy with the Democratic operatives in government, but it's on a whole other level at Fox News. Right. All right, here we go.
Well, not only that. I mean, I have half of their commentators on intelligence and the military are sitting on the boards of defense contractors.
Right. Yeah.
And they never disclose that.
Yeah. No. Well, they never disclose that, but also they are ex-government officials, themselves who went through the revolving door, don't disclose that, and now are giving, quote unquote reporting. All right, here we go.
About that. Oh, absolutely. Also, Fox just lies. Yes. Constantly. So there's that. There's truth, a little bit of truth, and just all lie.
Well, I mean, I would say you get a little bit of truth and a bunch of lies on both MSNBC and Fox News. I don't think Fox News is unique in that way.
As someone who keeps an eye on both, I would say they're exactly the same on the truth meter. Exactly
the same. And at Fox, I mean, when Tucker was there, you at least got a little bit of red pill reality. Now you don't. Now they have Jesse Waters. Now it's Laura Ingraham, Jesse Waters, Sean Hannity is basically the right wing equivalent of Joy Reid, Chris Hayes, and Alex
now
Wagner
they're back to I would once in a while I would put on Fox during the Obama administration, and certainly not to say there were not valid things to go after Obama with. But you would turn on Fox in the afternoon, and it would be like they wouldn't even say what he did. It was all subtext, like, yeah, Obama stopped at this diner and had egg salad. Egg salad, huh? Yeah, gotcha. What the fuck are you even talking about right now? So, but MSNBC was the same way with Trump. Trump is in New Hampshire today.
Yeah, and
speaking to people.
First of all, with regard to lies, their flagship story for the first 3 years of the Trump presidency, Russiagate, was one massive lie, screamed every night at the top of their lungs. The same host, their flagship host,
they spread that lie.
They went on. She went on the air. And she said, if you get a certain thing, I won't say what it is, certain thing goes right here. You get this thing here to prevent you from getting the thing that you prevent from getting this thing, it stops it at someone who gets the thing.
Want to be short of the bad batch of matzo brai.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, that was a lie. You have to
have the cholent to clear up the matzo brai.
Exactly. So what are they talking about? Oh, MSNBC, they don't outright lie.
Again,
some of the speculation on Russiagate on Maddow every night was ridiculous. It was like a completely dartboard.
But that's not a lie.
Charlie Day meme, ridiculous levels, and I think we've conceded that point.
Trump gets pissed on by
the
Russian
lying,
hookers.
That was I think she convinced herself of a lot of crazy shit. But the lying on Fox News is systemic.
Yeah, absolutely. That being said, that Russia stuff was riveting and not wrong.
What are you basing this take on?
How
is
you're
it
basing
not
this
systemic
take on
at MSNBC?
Is your bias. They don't see the propaganda on MSNBC as being equally insidious to the propaganda on Fox because they generally like Democrats better than Republicans, right? But if you generally like Republicans better than Democrats, you'd say the exact point in reverse. You would say, yeah, Fox, they go overboard sometimes, but they're not overt liars, whereas MSNBC, they are. It's just reflective of your preference for one party over the other, and that reflects in who these networks back. The MSNBC backs the Democrats, Fox backs the GOP, and so if you're a Democrat like Emma, you're going to say, certain times MSNBC, they go overboard, they get a little ridiculous. I'm sure the conservatives say that about Fox as well, right? I'm sure they say, sometimes Hannity, a bit of, whatever. But, generally it's better than MSNBC because they're just outright liars.
Right, sure. Well, this is, building on something we were talking about on the Post-Duopoly show the other day, that a lot of these legacy channels, their politics are frozen in the moment that they built their brand. Majority Report is an older channel. So you hear this is like a take from 10 years ago. This is like a take from the Obama era, right? Before people really lost faith in Obama. You know, if you considered yourself like one of the smarter people, this would be your take. Yeah, you know, MSNBC, sometimes it's bullshit, but you can't compare it to Fox. Like that's what passed for leftism in like 2005.
Right. Right. Exactly. And so, you know, I mean, that's just indicative of just old biases that apparently die hard, you know, for all this chirping about the difference between corporate media and independent media. I mean, if you're going to try and split hairs in that way, you may as well be MSNBC.
Well, it's just these guys are shitlib 2.0. They're a little younger. Their take is a little younger. They're a product of an America that's poorer and harder. So the kind of boomer attitudes of Michelle Rule, like that's not sustainable, right? I worked hard to be on Wall Street. Like they're not going to talk like that. They're basically that in a poorer America, right? So you got to give a few sops to the idea of universal health care and that, but they're just basically libs.
Exactly. Well said. We're going to take a Rumble rant here from Hiru4004, a $20 donation. That's very generous. Thank you very much. Hey, fellas, love what you do. The more true indie media, the better we all are. FYI, New York pizza is superior. Sorry, kid. Well, thank you for the donation, and thank you for backing
Give us pizza, give us death.
On that, exactly. By the way, big thanks and shout out to our friend Kit Cabello over at Hardlands Media. Hardlands Pizza.
Man, that's our next business venture.
That's how you know. That's some what do they call that? Subconscious shit there. Freudian slip. Hardlands Pizza. He should open a pizzeria.
That's a natural for us, man. I used to know a Lower East Side theater that owned a taco stand. You know, like we could be the channel that owns a pizzeria.
He should own a pizzeria. He's got the personality and the voice to own a pizzeria.
He does actually.
He actually has the personality to own a New York pizzeria, though. Because he gets a little loud, gets a little excited. Hey, where's that sausage and pepperoni? Hey, where is it? Come on.
Yeah.
See, you don't get that excited making Chicago pizza because Chicago pizza's never in a rush to come out the door. Because Chicago pizza, the people are sitting there. It's a relaxing experience. They got to eat it with a fork and knife. It takes forever. So there's not that hustle. But Kit has that hustle.
You're in the back laughing at these people ordering lasagna and calling it pizza.
Exactly. Kit would actually he has the personality for a New York pizzeria guy, I think. But thank you for the donation. And yes, shout out to Kit and to Sabby for putting us in touch with Dr. Cornel West. We are hoping to nail down a date to have him come on the show sooner than later. So stay tuned. We hope to have an announcement on that pretty shortly in the days to come.
Depending on how this episode goes.
Exactly, depending on how this episode
He might be watching.
Yeah. Well, we will see. All righty, folks. So let's go to our third headline of the night here. Joe Biden has appointed, as Common Dreams calls him, a death squad backer, Elliott Abrams, to diplomacy panel. Elliott Abrams, enemy of human rights, apologist for mass murder, should have no place within spitting distance of any Democratic administration in any capacity. This is an op-ed by Jake Johnson for Common Dreams. President Joe Biden on Monday quietly nominated Elliott Abrams to serve on a bipartisan diplomacy commission, a move that human rights advocates condemned as outrageous given the longtime Republican official's past as a defender of Latin American death squads and cheerleader for murderous U.S. foreign policy interventions. Even Mehdi Hasan couldn't bear this. He called it a totally indefensible decision from Biden, Mehdi Hasan wrote on Twitter, pointing to Abrams' guilty plea stemming from the Reagan-era Iran-Contra scandal and his broader record in Latin America. He was convicted of lying to Congress during the Iran-Contra scandal, a point that Ilhan Omar brought up during his Trump-era confirmation hearing because Trump's Secretary of State, his second Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, did appoint Abrams as a special envoy to Venezuela. of all places. Most recently, Abrams served as the Trump administration's special envoy to Iran and Venezuela. During a 2019 House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing, Ilhan Omar grilled Abrams on his role in the Reagan administration's policy in El Salvador, whose U.S.-backed military carried out the largest massacre in modern Latin American history in 1981 in and around the village of El Mozote. Here is Ilhan Omar. See, back when Trump was president, they were allowed to actually grill these people, right? Let's see what she has
before
to say.
she got her mind right.
Exactly.
February 8th, 1982, you testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about U.S. policy in El Salvador. In that hearing, you dismissed as communist propaganda report about the massacre of El Mozote, in which more than 800 civilians, including children as young as 2 years old, were brutally murdered by U.S.-trained troops. During that massacre, some of those troops bragged about raping a 12-year-old girl before they killed them. Girls before they killed them. You later said that the U.S. policy in El Salvador was a fabulous achievement. Yes or no, do you still think so?
From the day that President Duarte was elected in a free election to this day, El Salvador has been a democracy. That's a fabulous achievement.
Yes or no, do you think...
A lot of reflection this guy's done, you know? real deep conscience this guy has. We don't have to play the whole thing. I just wanted to show that. I mean, what a vicious piece of garbage this guy is. And, you know, this is the, you know, libs want everybody to understand there is no deep state. Right?
So where's Omar?
Right, where is she now?
She's not saying anything?
Have we heard from her now? Have we heard from her now?
You got your mind right, Luke.
Exactly.
Got her mind right.
You talk about a deep
she's not
state,
saying shit.
you know?
Should be. Her hair should be on fire. I remember when that clip came out. This is when these people were still heroes to a lot of us. To me, when I saw that, I was like, God damn! I never saw anybody do that in my lifetime in Congress. I never saw anyone do that shit. Remember when AOC used to grill the CEOs? We thought, oh yeah, man, this is what we voted for, right? When was the last time you saw that shit?
Right.
From any of them. Any of them.
No, exactly. And, you know, you talk about meet the old new boss, same as the old boss. You argue with people about whether there is a deep state or whether it's a conspiracy. That is the face of the deep state. That's the deep state. He worked for Reagan. He worked for Bush. He worked for George W. Bush. He was obviously a fierce advocate for the second Iraq War. Worked for Trump. Now he's back working for Joe Biden. So, I mean, if that doesn't convince you that there's a deep state, and if it doesn't show you the true face of the deep state, then what will it be? Right, exactly. Yeah,
you're gonna get a bonus metal track for that guy.
You're gonna burn in hell.
Oh yeah, no. What a piece of work that fucking guy is. Holy shit. All right, well we couldn't not mention that, folks. We had to give the devil.
Tell me again how I
due.
have to elect Democrats to keep the Republicans out of power.
Yeah.
They get in power either way, apparently.
Exactly. And, you know, I mean, you know, when the news of that broke, you know, it's obviously appalling, but is it surprising? Like, what are we supposed to say? What are we going to keep screaming like morons about this every time it happens?
I can't believe he did that.
Yeah, I can't believe he did that.
Oh, my God.
Exactly. I mean, what are we going to say?
It's almost like they don't stand for anything.
Right. Exactly.
It's almost like it's just one big clusterfuck of corporations, defense contractors, and elites.
Exactly.
Shocking.
Who knew?
Who knew?
Oh, my God. 827 in the YouTube chat, 108 in the Rumble chat. Thank you guys all very much for being here. Please hit that like button if you have not already, folks. And please, of course, hit that subscribe button as well. Thank you all very much for being here. Cortex 105, Keaton. Thanks for the tip, my friend. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kuznetsky Bassane. Woohoo, give him hell, DD. We are trying. And thank you. With your help, hopefully, we will succeed more than we fail. Terrabrate, thank you for the $5. Russell, I hope you videoed the shelves installation. You could have made that a pay-per-view.
I didn't video it. I did. I mean, that was a long process, man. I did take pictures of it.
Yeah, he documented it. We tweeted out a couple of photos. And actually, in the photos, you really appreciate just how curved they were. I mean, us looking on video here, it's a little tough to tell. But yeah, you really saw how taxed those planks were. Yeah, they were in pretty rough shape. It was probably a good call to fix them. Axel, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate it. Remember when the Chuck Schumer and the Dems were hooting and hollering about the need to appoint federal judges, they will reap what they've sown. Well, they, are very much against these rulings. And like Russell said in the segment, this is one of the benefits of having a court that sticks it in the Democrats' eye, because you don't know how a liberal court would rule. I mean, it's just a very difficult thing to say.
I think we know.
I'm not sure because you don't necessarily know how in line,
it's a point.
Who were some of them? I forget who they were. Who was the guy that just retired? Breyer and stuff. These are liberals, but are they that concerned with the immediate needs of the Democratic Party as Supreme Court justices? I mean, certainly some of them are.
I mean, Bush v. Gore.
Yeah, well, yeah, in that situation, sure. But Kagan, Sotomayor, they obviously are. Do we know that they would have ruled this way? I'm not sure, but I think the odds are better than 50-50, certainly, that they would have.
They can surprise you. I'll give you that.
Every once in a while. Jordan McD. TYT was always a hustle. Cenk just recognized an unserved niche in the marketplace. We've made similar points
made
before.
that argument many times. They started out the Howard Stern show.
Right, exactly.
He used to send Anna to the mall to seduce men into buying her shoes.
Right.
That was the kind of show they started out with.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, we will get to that in due time. We're going to try to move the show along at a decent pace because that last segment is going to be a little long. And so we figure we have to do that last since it's going to be a longer one. But so far, we're making pretty good time. Let's go to our fourth headline of the evening. Russell, this is all you, my friend, has a little presentation on DEI for us, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So do you want to take the floor?
Yeah, because I wanted to take an easy one.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Keaton, I'm going to take the mulligan tonight.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I'm doing DEI.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think a running theme of the show tonight is the cultural backlash against the movements of the last several years have arrived. I think between the Supreme Court ruling, what we're going to cover later with Anna, what we're going to cover with the backlash against Pride and Glenn Greenwald's take on it, and this move away from DEI, you're seeing this cultural backlash that's been building for years coming to a head. And we're going to cover Ron DeSantis later.
Yeah, let me just add really quickly. This does not have to spell doom for the left. In fact, it can be a good thing for the left if the left pulls its head out of its ass, which is why we're here.
Obviously, we consider it a good thing for the left. I don't want to speak for you, but I assume we're on the same page there. Okay, so diversity fatigue. Hollywood loses 4 DEI leaders in less than 2 weeks. Now this article is covering this with a certain bias in favor of DEI, so keep that in mind. 3 studios and the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences laid off or lost top diversity execs in the past 10 days, which gives the impression that the industry is placing diversity, equity, and inclusion on the back burner. I'll address that phrasing when we get more into this. Disney's chief diversity officer and senior vice president, Latondra Newton, a 6-year veteran, was the first of the 4 to go. On June 20th, the company said that Newton was leaving to pursue other endeavors. Predictably, her exit was celebrated by a faction of people, MAGA, who blamed her for Little Mermaid's woke casting, right? You're supposed to read that as MAGA, of Black actress and singer Halle Bailey. Her departure was followed by Wednesday's announcement that Verna Myers, Netflix's head of inclusion strategy, will step down from the role in September. She was the first person to serve in the role, which she held for 5 years. She will remain as an advisor to Netflix as she focuses on her consulting company. Friday, the day after the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action in education, brought a double departure, with Warner Brothers Discovery ousting SVP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Karen Horn, and the Academy parting ways with EVP of Impact and Inclusion, Janelle English. Horn joined WBD in March 2020, while English's role was created by Academy CEO Bill Kramer in July 2022. Okay, so the way that they're framing this, the way that they're phrasing it, you're meant to inherently, as is so often the case in the way these things are framed, you're supposed to see DEI as synonymous with championing diversity. You know, diversity is right there in the name, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. What they're not telling you is that DEI doesn't work. The entire grift of it has been cited in many studies, many papers. This is the New York Times, certainly not an institution or an outlet that would be inclined to question these ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. In fact, I'd be surprised if they didn't do these kinds of trainings themselves. But as this article cites, and you can do your own research on this, over the years, social scientists who have conducted careful reviews of the evidence base for diversity training have frequently come to discouraging conclusions. Though diversity training workshops have been around in one form or another since at least the 1960s, few of them are ever subjected to rigorous evaluation, and those that are mostly appear to have little or no positive long-term effects. Moving along, if diversity training has no impact whatsoever, that would mean that perhaps billions of dollars are being wasted annually in the United States on these efforts, but there's a darker possibility. Some diversity initiatives might actually worsen the DEI climates of the organizations that pay for them. That's partly because any psychological intervention may turn out to do more harm than good. In the case of DEI, Dr. Dobbin and Dr. Calev warned that diversity training that is mandatory or that threatens dominant groups' sense of belonging or makes them feel blamed may elicit negative backlash or exacerbate biases. Many popular contemporary DEI approaches meet these criteria. They often seem geared more towards sparking a revolutionary re-understanding of race relations than solving organization-specific problems, and they often blame white people or their culture for harming people of color. For example, the activist Tema Okun's work cites concepts like objectivity and worship of the written word as characteristics of white supremacy culture. Robin DiAngelo's white fragility training sessions are designed to make white participants uncomfortable, and microaggression training workshops are based on an area of academic literature that claims without quality evidence that common utterances like America is a melting pot harm the mental health of people of color. Many of these training sessions run counter to the views of most Americans of any color on race and equality, and they're generating exactly the sort of backlash that research predicts. Okay, so whenever you see a contradiction, check your premises, right? Are these companies stupid? Do they not know the literature shows that these trainings are absolutely useless? That if anything, they set people against each other? That they don't actually increase even the diversity of the hiring pool? They don't even do that much? No, they're not fucking stupid. They're very smart. This allows them to say they're doing something. This is great, getting rid of these programs. Now, that shouldn't be the end of the conversation. Now let's talk about how you really increase diversity at these companies without setting people against each other. And as those of us who will argue they want to start a culture war to avoid a class war, that's what's going on inside these companies. Workers that hate each other on the basis of some workshop they were forced to take are not likely to get together and confront management. right? They're too busy hunting each other for microaggressions. And in terms of, they mentioned some of the divisive ideas that are presented in some of these workshops. And they actually, a little later in the article, they mentioned this specifically. I want to actually show this for anyone who hasn't seen this. Okay, so this is rather infamous. This was on display at the Smithsonian, and it's based on the theories of the writer that they mentioned. This was on display at the Museum of African American History at the Smithsonian, and it basically defines hard work, timeliness, rationality. It defines these as white qualities. It tells us that hard work, delayed gratification, planning for the future, the nuclear family, rational thinking, promptness, politeness, decision-making, personal responsibility, and speaking standard English are white. And just to read a little of the author's commentary, and by implication, it's telling us that Black people are not characterized by any of these traits. When I saw this graphic, it gave me an immediate creepy feeling of deja vu. Specifically, it brought me back to that period in late 2015 and early 2016 when all of the white nationalists and alt-right types migrated out of the comment sections at Stormfront and descended upon Twitter. Do you remember what those people kept insisting? Exactly what the National Museum of African American History and Culture is telling us, that all of these desirable characteristics are distinctive and unique to the white race. Exactly. It's not a tragedy that they're firing all of these DEI people, nor do I think that they're doing it for the reasons I would want them to do it, to actually make a sincere effort to create more diversity at their companies. They're doing it because credit isn't cheap anymore. Money isn't cheap anymore. These companies don't have money to just burn on fake diversity initiatives anymore. So they're looking at where they can cut fat, and they're cutting it there. But we on the left should use that opportunity to open up a conversation. Hey, we've wrested control of this conversation away from these fucking race hustling grifters. Let's have a real conversation about how we get more diversity at these companies, and let's shut down the Robin DiAngelo diversity complex.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. Number one, back when this was just an audio show, way back, this was probably summer of 2020, I think I interviewed Cedric Michael Simmons, who's at the time, I believe he was an adjunct professor at Ithaca, but he wrote a great piece about the Robin DiAngelo book, and so maybe I'll post that to the feed, just an audio piece, because he makes the exact same points that, you hire these, rich people to come in and lecture workers about how problems at the workplace are workers' fault.
You know how much DiAngelo's consultants get?
It's like 100, 200 grand a piece, right?
It's $2,500 an hour.
Okay,
an
yeah.
hour.
Yeah, so I'm talking about like at a speaking event or something like that. Yeah. But when they actually have to go in and talk, it's huge money. The other thing, I saw some people in the chat were really surprised when they saw that graphic that you put up about how they acted as if all these desirable qualities in employees were white qualities, and oh my God, of course it's an awful thing to put up, but not an awful thing to put up, an awful thing to see. I'm not saying you were awful for putting it up. Sorry if it came out that way. No, I mean, yeah, right, exactly. Of course, you should resign immediately. No, I took a class in international cross-cultural management, and this is why I think business school is just such outrageous bullshit, because one of the chapters was like how to organize like meetings with people from across different cultures or different countries, right? So if you're doing a remote meeting, you have to account for how every culture interprets time, is what they said. In France, it's rude to schedule a meeting less than 2 weeks advance because they need 2 weeks to plan, right? In Japan, you're expected to be on time to the second, right? In some other country, I forget what it was, it's acceptable to be up to 5 or 10 minutes late, right? So like you have to like the idea is that you have to drive yourself crazy every time you schedule a meeting to make sure everyone is accommodated when you schedule a meeting. Rather than, hey, we're scheduling a meeting, we need everybody here at this time, everybody kind of try and deal with it to get here at this time. Like, yeah, maybe I know, okay, if we're within 10 days, I'm sorry to the French person. If someone's 2 minutes late, I'm sorry to the Japanese person, right? Let's all come together and kind of work together and deal with it, because it's impossible to drive yourself crazy with all this shit. But the point is to make it impossible. Like, academic schools of thought arise out of created problems by PMC libs.
Yes.
They create fake problems, and then they hire a bunch of people to try and alleviate them. They can never actually solve them. That's the grift. That's the hustle.
I saw this. There was a guy who wrote an article to that effect. They interviewed him on Quillette. I forget his name, but he made the argument that all of this is a make work for program for the PMC.
Of course, yes. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. You shouldn't need a textbook on cross-cultural management. The fact that some asshole got paid however many thousands of dollars to write a textbook about how to schedule a virtual meeting in the 21st century and accommodate French people, Japanese, and everybody's got to have their schedules coordinated, right? It's just a make work program for like wannabe elite paper pushers. That's all it is.
Right. And you look at the framing of that article, and this is the framing that is going to be pushed by these hustlers. Like, see, they hired these people because of George Floyd, but they didn't really mean it. What they didn't really mean is that they're going to keep lining your fucking pockets for a program that I have very little doubt they knew is ineffective. That's the point. That's the point. It's a placebo so that your employees of color can see white people getting yelled at and go, yeah, man, this company is watching out for us.
Right. Exactly.
Then you don't have to do anything else, right? Look, you humiliated some white people.
Right.
Okay, done. now I can hire my fraternity brother's idiot nephew to work over that person.
Right. All right, let's take some super chats here, and let's put up our Patreon plug here, and let's give our due thanks to our patron supporters and paid Substack subscribers. You can sign up at patreon.com/DoDissidents or DoDissidents.substack.com. You can also click that join button right underneath our screen here, right next to the subscribe button, and become a recurring supporter through YouTube. The Long Drop did just that a few minutes ago. So thank you very much for doing that. That really helps us out a great deal. We appreciate that very, very much. Janice Anderson or Janice, I'm not sure which one, how you say that, but thank you for the donation.
Are they?
I'm sorry?
No, I was just reading this.
Oh, okay. Received a text earlier today. Wow, you're a fast reader. That took like no time. Received a text earlier today about Workers' Strike Back having a meeting 2 p.m. this Sunday in New York City. Wish I can go, but have to work. All right, I will reach out and I will find out about that. We reached out to Shama a couple times to have her on. I'd love to have her on the show. That'd be great.
I think I could probably cover that, actually.
All right. That would be cool. That would be great. We will look into that. Thank you for the heads up. I don't know what's going on. I'm on their email list. Maybe it's going to the junk folder or something. Maybe Google's throttling. Maybe Gmail's throttling them. I don't know. All right. Let's go to another super chat here. This is going to be a little tough to do here. Roger Meadows says, congrats on SCOTUS decision. You can now say... What? What's that? What happened? I thought we were allowed to say. We can now say... It's not working. Not working. Maybe not yet. Maybe they're slow.
Not just yet.
They're slow to adapt. Thank you, Roger.
The AI is coming for us.
Right, exactly.
And I hear it's made of liquid metal. Its
hands
turn into knives.
Exactly, yeah. I don't know what happened there. I said it. It beat me in real time. Uh-oh.
Shawan, we've tried to get Kashama on. We think she won't come on because we're white boys. That's our theory.
We think
no,
she's
seriously, that's what we think.
We think she's dissing us.
We think she's dissing us because she's like, those
probably
are
thinks
like
we're
the
a couple-
whitest white boys on the internet, except for the Vanguard. We're not going on there.
We will keep plugging away. Keep plugging away. This is from Rumble. This is, I forget your name. I'm sorry. I'll find it here. Tyler Johnson. I'm surprised it took so long for Russ to just turn off the fisheye effect he had. Yeah, it was all sleight of hand. All sleight of hand. Yeah, no, I mean, it did look like he had the fisheye effect, but I think that was because of the shelves. Because now, without the shelves, it doesn't look fisheye at all.
All right,
but I could see why people thought that, because it did kind of look like you had the fisheye on.
All right, so that's how bowed those shelves were.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was pushing it. That was pushing it. And they're pretty high up, and those books are pretty heavy. So, like, you could have gotten hurt. Like, you really could have.
Yeah.
This is from our friend Ellen, who's over on Rumble tonight. Thanks for repping the Rumble chat, Ellen. Thank you. Got 127 people over there on Rumble. Thank you guys very much. Folks, please go subscribe to our Rumble channel. Go follow the Rumble channel. And folks, if you're in Rumble and you have not followed this channel, hit that follow button. Looks like it's in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, just underneath where we are. But it's very important that we build up our alternative media presence heading into the 2024 cycle. This guy calls himself The Quartering, just stopped doing streams on YouTube. He went exclusively to Rumble, not because he's been cracked down upon, but because he sees the writing on the wall. And so by the time big tech really cracks the whip, it's too late, right? You have to build these presences up on these platforms before that happens, because if you wait until it's too late, then you're out of luck. So if you haven't subscribed to our Rumble channel, please do that. If you're watching on Rumble now, please hit that follow button. El Masote, I can't make a flippant comment, but I've got a small tip from my boys. Well, thank you, Ellen. We appreciate that very, very much. Always great to see you in the chat. Let's go to a couple more super chats while our patron scroll wraps up there. It seems to have just wrapped here. Virtuoso, thank you for the $5, my friend. You folks wanted poor Russ to keep that sagging bookcase. Why? So we can
Seriously.
get with a book avalanche live on air. You people are sadistic. Well, yeah, I mean, look, this is a sadistic space, man.
It is. We've got the sickest, what is it? The most depraved
The most
audience?
delusional and depraved audience on YouTube.
That's
That's what the Vanguard guys said about us.
See, Jezzy, you know what I have back here? I have like B-movie action figures fighting Gandhi on these shelves. I have whole like dioramas going on up here that are sick. They're degenerate and sick.
Degenerate and sick. That's why he fixed the shelves, because when he went to India, he had all this, valuable stuff that he got that he didn't want falling or getting ruined, and probably some heavy stuff that he didn't want falling on his head and hurting him. But yeah, look at that. That goes way up there. Where? Where should I be looking for Gandhi?
Yeah, there's Gandhi and the two B-movie action figures. You got an alligator.
Interesting. Look at that.
I got all kinds of stuff going on here.
James Vanderzanden says, TYT majority report, no policy difference from Democrat Party. Very little, my friend. Very little. Thank you very much. Sinead says, just saying hiya. Hiya. Sinead, thank you very much for saying hi and tuning in. We appreciate that very, very much. And Jen X, thank you for the $5 super sticker. We appreciate that very, very much. All right, we got a few more. We will read in a few moments. But let's get into our main segments of the night, folks, here. Moving right along. So June was Pride Month, and here we are in early July. So people are looking back on a Pride Month that did not have the jubilant feel across America quite in the same way that recent Pride Months have had, which I think is a very sad thing, and I will get into it in a moment. But we will give Glenn Greenwald the first word here, and he was on the Megyn Kelly show talking about this. We have the audio from that show because his interview was intercut with some footage that we don't know if we're allowed to show. I don't know what kind of arrangement Megyn Kelly has, but we are not in her class of YouTuber just yet, so I don't know what the deal is. It's very telling, though, because there are a lot of people say that there's nothing to see with a lot of these concerns, and yet a lot of the footage covering this is footage that we literally don't know if we're allowed to see. So that's part of the point here.
It.
But let's go.
Megyn was committing sex crimes in France, apparently filming naked old men and things.
Exactly. Let's see. Here's Glenn Greenwald with Megyn Kelly.
With
my apologies. Here we go.
What the hell is happening with Pride?
Yeah, look, I mean, the gay and lesbian movement was an important part of my life. It's what enabled me to be legally married. It was something I supported for a long time. And the linchpin of it is something that not only I believe, but that most Americans ended up believing. There was a cultural war consensus in the United States, and it was based on the principle that adults have the right to live their lives in whatever way they think will bring them the most self-actualization, and that a healthy, decent society facilitates that freedom and doesn't impede it. And if you look at polling data in 2015, most Americans favored same-sex marriage, even young conservatives, and even people had no problem with trans adults. They thought trans people should have basic legal protections. They shouldn't be kicked out of their apartments. They shouldn't be fired from their jobs. All of that has unraveled because the LGBTQIA+2 movement, or whatever acronym you prefer, has basically waged a war on that principle. There were people chanting in the streets, we're coming for your children. The San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus sung a song that said, we're coming for your children. They want to indoctrinate people's children. They're claiming that you are required to get certain...
All right, we're going to go a little out of order. Let me just play what he's referring to there since he cited it. All right, so there we go. All right, let's go back.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, let's go back to Glenn.
What could possibly go wrong with that?
Yeah.
Indoctrinate people's children. They're claiming that you are required to get certain trans-affirming treatment for your children if they identify as trans, even if you don't want them to, and that you could be deemed guilty of child abuse and have your children taken away if you don't. The whole movement has transformed from one, we want to be left alone and live our lives the way we want, to no, actually, we want to control your lives too and make your kids think what we want them to think and even influence the way they grow up. And this has unraveled that consensus. And this is all part of it. This is a movement that was once a marginalized community in the United States, didn't have much power, had to hide, was genuinely persecuted. They now have every institution of power on their side. They know it, and it's become a bullying movement. And this idea that we're going to go out into the streets publicly in front of your kids and be fully naked and sexualize that nudity, and you can't do anything about it, is the mentality of a movement that believes, in this case with good reason, that they are now sort of the majority, that they have the power. And they're using it in ways that are very self-destructive.
Well, that's the key, right? Is using it in ways that are very self-destructive. That's the operative concept there, is self-destructive. It's a sad thing. I remember when I was in high school, that's when George W. Bush was re-elected, and he was able to win that election, not based on support for the Iraq War, but based on a very cynical ploy to put gay marriage on the ballot in the state of
Ellen's
Ohio.
Ellen's buddy there.
What?
Ellen's buddy. Ellen's buddy won re-election by cynically
DeGeneres. On this show, we assume Ellen means Ellen Jimerson. That's our house, Ellen. So
sorry, Ellen.
That's why you threw me a little bit there. Yeah. No, not Ellen Jimerson's buddy. Yeah. No, but he won that race by ginning up legitimate anti-LGBT sentiment in the state of Ohio. Gay marriage was something that John Kerry and John Edwards did not embrace. Even when Barack Obama became the nominee in 2008, he did not embrace it, right? Democrats did not come out for gay marriage until into Obama's second term. And so I remember in high school, I was a theater kid in high school, so I had a lot of gay friends in high school. And there was this very sort of chilled atmosphere around the issue, because the issue was being litigated at the national level and the gay community was losing. And I remember being very heartened by the fact that by the time I was out of high school, I started directing theater locally, not associated with the school. A friend of mine owned a theater in town, and so I directed a lot of plays, and we taught acting classes to a lot of the high school kids. And then a lot of them we cast in our shows, and then when they were a bit older in college and things like that, when the Pride Parade came around, it was a thing every year where they would get dressed up and they would take the train and they would go, and it was this big social event. Like, the attitude around it was
This
just so
jubilant. This is why I never understood guys who joined bands to get girls. I was always like, dude, go into theater. All the guys are gay.
All the guys are gay. Got no competition, right?
That's it. You're like the only. It's like being on a desert island, right? And you're the only dude.
But the atmosphere by, the the late aughts, even before gay marriage was one, the late aughts, early 2010s and stuff, it was this really jubilant, celebratory atmosphere. It was this very positive, fun thing. There was no dark cloud of controversy hanging over it. And it was like, wow, what a difference between when I was in high school and when like these kids are coming up now. Isn't it great? All the progress that's been made in such a short period of time. Who thought that 10 years later you'd have companies being pressured to back out of this and this sort of turn that Greenwald talks about there? Greenwald is a gay man himself, obviously. I'm sure everybody knows that, but just had to point that out because he's speaking from the heart here. These are issues that affect him, of course, and affect people who he obviously cares about. And I just think it's a very sad thing on a whole.
Yes, and this is kind of the running theme of the evening because this is indeed a complex of ideas that come off of a common root of postmodern theory, in terms of critical race and queer theory and so on. And it's an inherently divisive position and philosophy that assumes that, all reality is a social construct and society therefore is a zero-sum game between competing interests attempting to define reality, hence terms like heteronormativity, right? We're going to get into this with Anna a little bit, the whole debate around using cis and not using cis. The purpose of it, and this is something they'll deny if you confront them, is to make heteronormativity the abnormal thing. That's the project, right? To queer things, to make everything queer, right? Rather than heteronormal. So you want to stigmatize heteronormativity, right? You want to call them cis. You don't want them to be the default, right? You don't want a woman to be a woman. You want them to be a cis woman, right? You want to, in a way, be able to pull it out. Now, as people like Greenwald, veterans of the gay rights movement.
Sorry, I had to break your flow, but this was funny. You guys are not gay?
Only at parties.
Sorry,
Keaton's only gay for pay.
That was funny. Right, exactly, yeah.
He's only gay. His big movie is the
I assumed you guys were gay. What?
Actually, that's the reference we keep making when we talk about the virus of unknown origin.
Yeah.
Keaton's big gay for pay movie was called The Matzo Brie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
all right, sorry, I didn't mean to.
You can look it up.
I mean, I did, but I thought it was worth it.
You did, and now I don't even remember. What's this segment about?
Cis, heteronormative.
Oh, yeah, right, all that. Okay, so for decades, the gay rights movement argued, which is what Greenwald's talking about here, we just want to live our lives in peace. We're not coming for your children. And yet, here we see in the Washington Post, yes, kink belongs at Pride, and I want my kids to see it. Now, one of the most damaging things about this is the conservative argument against making progress in these areas was always this, that it's a slippery slope. They always made the slippery slope argument. They always said, well, yeah, maybe you could allow gay marriage, but then people are going to want to marry their horse, right? They always made these arguments, and they got laughed at, as they should. And then you are empowering those arguments with things like this. So, yes, kink belongs at Pride, and I want my kids to see it. Okay, so just reading a little of this. I love the language she uses here to try to make this not sound as sick as it is. When our children grew tired of marching. Okay, so this is a woman, nearest I could figure from her jargon and vocabulary. She's a woman married to a trans woman who came out as trans well into their marriage. That's what I'm gathering. When our children grew tired of marching, we plopped onto a nearby curb. Just as we got settled, our elementary schooler pointed in the direction of oncoming floats, raising an eyebrow at a bare-chested man in dark sunglasses whose black suspenders clipped into a leather thong. The man paused to be spanked playfully. Oh, it's playful, so it's okay. By a partner with a flog. What are they doing? My curious kid asked as our toddler cheered them on. The pair was the first of a few dozen kinksters who danced down the street laughing together as they twirled their whips and batons, some leading companions by leash. It's like a Disney parade. At the time, my children were, well, these days it might be. At the time, my children were too young to understand the nuance of the situation. Well, thank heaven for small miracles. But I told them the truth, that these folks were members of our community, celebrating who they are and what they like to do. Okay, so skipping ahead in a little bit, she not only very often when you do things like if you watched our show that I did touching on drag performances on the Rumble channel, a lot of people in our own audience who were a little more keyed into this than most people on the left, I would say, or they would have left our channel already, were shocked by some of what I was showing in my montage of people in thongs with 3-year-olds and training them to give them money or even to dance for money. They were very shocked by what they saw. And people who have pushed back on that on my own Facebook, because I shared that video on Facebook, and I have a lot of theater people, and that's like shit lib central. Anyone who pushed back on it argued that this isn't sexual, like that they're not actually trying to sexualize children. Now, what I really appreciate about this article is she just goes for it. So children who witness kink culture are reassured that alternative experiences of sexuality and expression are valid, no matter who they become as they mature, helping them recognize that their personal experiences aren't bad or wrong and that they aren't alone in their experiences. I can't think of a more relevant or important reminder for youth who often struggle with feelings of isolation and confusion as they discover more about themselves and wrestle with concerns about whether they're normal enough. Including kink in Pride opens space for families to have necessary and powerful conversations with young people about health, safety, consent, and most uniquely, pleasure. Kink visibility is a reminder that any person can and should shamelessly explore what brings joy and excitement. We don't talk to our children enough about pursuing sex to fulfill carnal needs that delight and captivate us in the moment. Sharing the language of kink culture with young people provides them with valuable information about safe sex practices, such as the importance of establishing boundaries, safe words, and signals. Yes, you want your 6-year-old to know. Pickles, say pickles if you don't like what's happening. Affirming the importance of planning and research and the need to seek and give enthusiastic consent. Well, as long as it's enthusiastic from an 8-year-old. I never want my children to worry that exploring any aspect of consensual sex or touch is too taboo. Okay, so when you confront these people, they will always say, no, it's not, we're not sexualizing children. There you go. And you could say, well, this is one person. Well, it's in the house organ of the establishment, the Washington Post. You could say that if I found this in some random place on Medium, or if this is not in any way reflective of what you actually see in terms of behavior. So when they say, no, these I'm not talking about a drag queen reading Cinderella, whatever. We're talking about these very sexualized drag shows. We're talking about children performing drag in very sexualized manners. She just straight out gave up the game. I get the impression this person is kind of fundamentally stupid and just didn't have enough sense to hide what she was really saying. She's saying straight out, yeah, no, we should be talking to children about exploring sexual pleasure through kink. I mean, she straight out said it there. So the backlash that we're getting now is the result of that philosophy put into practice, right? That is the philosophy that makes you decide to take children to a drag brunch with half-naked performers. That's what underlies it. It is the, whatever they might try to tell you, it is the sexualization of children. How did we get here? You know, I've often said, I think it's partly, and I think Greenwald himself has said this, I think you have a lot of people. Yeah, actually, I know Greenwald said this. You have a lot of people who make their living off the gay marriage movement, who were out of fundraising appeals when gay marriage passed. They had to come up with things that would be so disturbing to the majority of people that they would provoke a backlash and claim oppression, claim they're after us. See what they're doing to us? You know, when you hear they're passing all of these anti-LGBTQ bills in Republican legislatures, what's the nature of those bills? Not wanting to put children on puberty blockers and hormone treatments, not wanting children at very sexualized drag performances. Guess what, Sunshine? You brought that on yourselves. You brought that on yourselves. Most conservatives, you know, they're not the most urban kind of people, man. A lot of this shit, they didn't even know was happening. They didn't know anything about this until you trolled them with it. You wanted a backlash, and now you got it. Now you got it. But unfortunately, people like Glenn, people like friend of show Buck Angel, they're the ones who have to suffer for the fact that a certain number of, I would say, grifters have decided to lead people down this path without any care for what the consequences are to that community. That's why I always tell people, if you really care about that community, you should tell them to knock this shit off. Stop it.
Well, look, there's a school of thought that says you should start sex ed early and actually get more explicit every year until you reach, 12 or 13. Like, that is a school of thought. Now, when we say explicit, they don't mean like pornographic. They just mean, describe in greater detail where everything goes and all that shit and, how you can do it and things like that. So there is a school of thought. It's not necessarily, universally accepted, right? It's like debated. But there is a school of thought that says you should start that younger. But like I said, to put it the way she's putting it there, when it comes to kink and stuff, that is fast pedaling it, I think, beyond where even that school of thought would say, okay, this is the pace at which we should go.
Because it's not really a gay rights movement. It's I used this example once before, and that's what so much of this reminds me of. When JFK Jr. went and killed his poor wife and sister-in-law by being a fucking arrogant prick, you had these
in the
idiots.
Plane, just so everybody knows.
In the plane, yeah. He took it. For anyone who doesn't know, he took a plane up in weather that experienced pilots did not take up their planes in because it was dangerous. I'm a Kennedy, I can handle it, right? Fucking the Kennedy family paid out damages to her family, to his wife's family. They sued them. So you had these morons, I'll never forget it, coming out, my people, Gen Xers, coming out and crying. Oh, he meant so much to us, because they wanted so much for it to be JFK. They wanted so much to have a generational moment that was as profound, as significant as that. That's what a lot of this, I feel, is for a lot of people who get involved in it. They want this to be an extension of the civil rights movement. They want DEI to be an extension of the MLK March on Washington. They want to be a part of something like that, but you can't be, because this is not that historical moment. So they create conflicts with the society, with a lot of urging from hustlers and grifters who make their living off ginning these things up. They want to see it as an extension or a continuation of the gay rights movement. And it's not. In many ways, its core philosophy is oppositional to what was best in the gay rights movement. And that's why so many of the people who created that movement are looking on this in horror. It's also something in our culture. I mean, part of what makes it possible to sell this, culturally, it's often been commented on that we believe in progress, right? And that leads us to tend to think if it's new, it's better. And that's not always the case. A lot of times what's new is worse. Does anyone talk about the art right after the Renaissance? Right? Just because it's the next thing doesn't mean it's a better thing. I think that's the case here. I think a lot of these movements, they've just jumped the shark. And progress, this is a theory, and I think this is borne out by what we're experiencing. You're going up the slope towards gay rights, towards gay marriage, towards civil rights, towards the Voting Rights Act, towards all of these things. And then past a certain point, progress becomes regressive. They run out of good place. You get to a good place and you keep going. So where's it going to take you if you keep going beyond that place? I mean, if philosophically you're in a good place, I'm not saying we had all our problems solved and they fucked it up. But the philosophy with which these things were being attacked was a philosophy that was unifying, that was bringing us all together. And as you say, what's your memory of the gay rights movement in your youth, right? I mean, that's my memory of it. That's my experience of it. We were all together. There wasn't any of this. I never had a bad word to say about it. Like, why would I?
No, the symbol that went viral, if everybody remembers, some of our Gen Zers won't remember this probably, although you might. I mean, you may have been 12 or 13 at the time. But in the lead up to that gay marriage ruling, the symbol that went viral was the red background with the pink equal sign. That was what everybody was posting. Yep. And I posted it too, right? Yep. Because that was the goal. And that should always be the goal. And I think, if there's a theme of this show, it's that there's a bit of a... You can call these growing pains, or you can call this a sort of, intra-left feud that I think is starting to become settled in ways that I think can ultimately benefit the left. I think that's true. But there are, of course, still obstacles in the way, and we're going to get to that in our next segment here, but we'll take some super chats. No, for those of you guys worrying that you missed the Anna thing, you did not miss the Anna thing. We're saving that for last so that everybody can file in here. We hope to have that going in about 20 minutes. We're trying to keep this show moving because we don't want to keep you guys up all night.
Now we're doing a 3-show week, so...
Right, we're doing 3 shows a week now, so we were hoping not to have many of the 4-hour epics anymore. So we're hoping we could spread things out here. Dave Dillerai, thank you very much. You guys covering On the Ground will be both informative and hilarious. Yeah, we're thinking we can get some comedic material mingling with the deplorables, for the GOP primary. Might just have to up my sub rate. Well, that would be hugely helpful. Like I said, we are going to be disclosing our fundraising goals and stuff in the coming days, probably either by Friday or by Sunday show. But yeah, it's going to cost some money. We're going to have to get some plane tickets, rent some cars, and get some cameras. So it's not going to be cheap, but we will keep you updated. By the way, I got this van out back. Numbers don't match, no title, but it runs. Just needs a muffler. All right. Well, there you go.
Listen, man, I'm at an age now where they're not going to slap me on the wrist for getting caught and something like that. They're going to put me in fucking jail, man.
Yeah.
I don't play those games anymore.
Did you flag this, Russell?
Yes.
The shelves have gone white. Yeah. Robert Penner. White supremacy culture paper DEI people site was written by a white person with a degree in PE. It's just a list made up with no research behind it. Interesting. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that, and thank you for the donation. Mouse.
Sounds like something a white person would come up with.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking whitey.
Earthquake Anxiety Reduction Fund. Thanks you. Yeah, there you go. Less worried. Those are more earthquake proof now. Yeah. Indeed. Bennett Weiss is my dad. Greenwald's intelligence, bravery, and all-around menshiness do more to dissolve anti-gay attitudes and a zillion rainbow flags. Yeah, I agree. Right.
When we get him on the show, we're going to share that with him.
Yeah, we will share that with him, and I'm sure he would appreciate that. It's true. I mean, and you could tell this. Well, this is actually going to come up in our next segment, so I won't get into it all just yet here. We'll do one more of these, and then we will head back to the segments here. Did I miss Anna breaking from left? No, you did not. My delicious Schadenfreude. Add this to your coffee fund. Thank you. Miss you. Love you guys. Thank you, Dan Sumo. We will get to that in just a few moments. So thank you guys very much. Just checking the Rumble. Nothing here. All right, beautiful. 143 watching in the Rumble. Hit that follow button if you're following us on Rumble. Please. It makes a big difference. Thank you so much. All right, so this is a related segment, folks, and, this is why, Russell made this point a few shows back, and, I've made this point before. A lot of people equate rejecting the excesses of a certain movement to reflect your overall general attitude towards people, and that's absolutely not true. And so I hope that comes out in this next segment, at least from me, because I got a few things to say about this. The Ron DeSantis War Room Twitter account dropped a video ad that's garnered a lot of attention. The ad attacks Donald Trump for being too friendly to the LGBT community. Now, here's a portion of the ad. Now, DeSantis, weasel that he is, shrewd, cunning little prick that he is, may have created the ad with the music that he chose specifically because he knew that people couldn't play it on YouTube without getting in trouble, because no one's playing the full version of this ad. And according to Russell said, David Dole said something about it. It's because the music is copyrighted. So we won't be able to give you the full musical experience. I'll add my music that's sort of similar to the music that he has under it. He has this sort of pulsing nightclub music under most of the ad. Yeah. But he starts out, the War Room says, Donald Trump, too friendly to the LGBT community. So here is Ron DeSantis trying to position himself to Trump's right on this issue. This is from the ad. Sorry, apologize.
I will do everything in my power.
Sorry, I got to get a clean start on this goddamn thing. All right, here we go.
I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens. Psych!
Now the music starts. Boom, 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 boom. The pulsing music. Boom, boom, boom.
Ice, ice, boom, baby. Boom, boom, too cold, too cold.
I'm a closeted gay. Ice, that's baby, why I do this ad. I'm Ron DeSantis and I'm gay.
You don't drink, don't smoke. What do? You don't drink, don't
You're
smoke.
Not supposed to know it, but I'm actually a gay man myself.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's a little bit of a montage, basically a montage of Ron DeSantis trolling the LGBT community, the classic Leonardo DiCaprio from Wolf of Wall Street image there. That's meme images. If you're a really online person, you'll recognize a lot of these images. One, this video was meant, obviously, to troll gay and trans people, which I do not approve of. It's very unstatesmanlike. It's extremely, extremely divisive, much more so than even Trump. That's the point of it. That's why he put it out. He says, I can trigger the libs, and I pose a threat not just to woke people, but to gay people. Like, he literally has photos there. He has, clips of, Mike Figueredo and all these alternative YouTube people. Cenk is on there. Mike Figueredo's on there. The Vanguard guys were even clipped in that ad, right? As calling him a threat to gay people.
Were they in that ad?
Yeah, they were actually in that ad. They made that ad.
I saw it, but all right.
It was really targeted to the young online sort of anti-woke, sort of Matt Walsh, Daily Wire.
Well, that's it, man.
Incel, maybe closeted gay audience. I would posit. I would float that as a possibility. Yeah, the Andrew Tate, exactly. And he got a lot of pushback, not just from the left, obviously, but even from a lot of the right, And this this goes back to what Glenn Greenwald was talking about in our previous segment. These will be clipped separately for YouTube, in the coming days. But Greenwald mentions how we had won this battle. Like, we had achieved this great victory in gay rights to the point where it is now mainstream, even in conservative circles, to harbor no animosity towards gay and trans people as a whole. And that's why you're getting a lot of pushback even from the right. Here's Karl Rove. Karl Rove, easily on my list of top 10 most loathsome political figures in the last century. But here he is making exactly that point about how DeSantis really had the culture war won in terms of rejecting the excesses of the sort of, LGBT movement, the sort of more like militant factions that we just talked about in the last segment when it comes to drag shows in front of kids and certain books in schools and things like that. But then he took it to this place where he clearly just wanted to communicate to his base that he is a threat to gay and trans people, which is just completely over the line. Here's Karl Rove saying this.
Want to know what you make of this. So, Karl, want to know what you make of this. DeSantis jumped headfirst into this roaring debate about treatment or mistreatment of LGBTQ Americans. Seems like an unforced error.
Yeah, look, at the heart of it, it is mystifying. Let's start off by that. But at the heart of what he has done are things that have a great deal of popularity. He has signed a law saying biological males cannot participate in women's sports. He said we won't have discussion of gender in kindergarten through, I think it's grade 3 or 4, and we will only have age-appropriate sex education after that. These are the kind of things that people are strongly in favor of, but this ad makes it look like he glories, or his campaign is glorying in attacking the LGBTQ community, and I do think it's an unforced error. I mean, he's got a record that he could take to people and say, I stand for traditional values and here's what I've done. And the kind of things that I mentioned earlier are, like 2-to-1 winners. But this was an odd video delivered at an odd time. And maybe they wanted the controversy. If they did, they're getting it.
All right. Now, I mentioned earlier in this live stream that George W. Bush won re-election in 2004 because he put gay marriage up as a referendum, as a ballot initiative in the state of Ohio. And they drove up anti-gay sentiment in Ohio, and that's what brought out the evangelical vote, and that's what put George W. Bush over the top in that race. That was Karl Rove's idea to do that. Of course, yeah. So this guy set the gay rights movement back a very long way on purpose for the most cynical and opportunistic reasons. And even he, 19 years later, is coming out and saying, hey, it's one thing to come out against drag shows and sex ed for first graders and, the litany of issues that DeSantis has built his brand on. It's another thing to just troll gay people as a people. He's like, you can't do that. Even this guy is saying you can't do that. So look, DeSantis is a sick fucking bastard. And what Russ has said before is that a lot of the excesses of the gay and trans movement now have empowered that sort of backlash. At the same time, I feel like this is how culture wars get stoked. Because now what DeSantis has just done with this ad is he has given credibility to a lot of the extremists on the other side who says, yeah, they are coming for us. Because there is no gay conservative who watches that ad who thinks Ron DeSantis wants his vote, right? I mean, there's just no way you could feel welcome in that coalition after seeing such a vile, obnoxious, unstatesmanlike video.
Yes. Just on a horse race level, like, what are they doing? Like, this isn't just, oh, we're crazy. Yeah, they're going after, they feel clearly, I mean, this is how I'm reading it. Strategically, they're trying to chip away at what they see as Trump's coalition. And with an ad like this, they're going after the Tim Pool. They're going after the Daily Wire, as you say. Like, they're going after the very online, younger right. I think they feel that they're going to be easier to get, that they're more likely to go for this that kind of an image, like Top Gov, who passed all this legislation and is fighting woke. I say what I've said all along. You know, you're seeing a lot of stories. Oh, DeSantis is done. DeSantis is done. Listen, that's worth as much as somebody covering a prize fight going, he's on the ropes. He's on the ropes. That doesn't tell you how the fight's going to end, right? Like that's what they're paid to do. They're paid to gin up your excitement and come up with narratives that are eye-catching. It's a long way to the vote. And Trump has a lot of troubles that he's going to have to deal with between now and then. Is this strategy effective for the audience that it's for? Probably. Is it worth what it costs them with other people?
Right. That's the issue. That's the thing.
It's hard to say. In the long run, this is so early. It's not like this is the thing that he's never going to be able to get out from under, right? I mean, you know, these are smart people. If they see this didn't work for them, they'll shift away, or they'll say, as when we were talking about this offline, they'll say, no, we're just talking about the activists. We're not talking, you know, like they'll come up with some way to soften it.
Well, just to add a little context, at the beginning, when Trump says we will protect our LGBT citizens, he was speaking in reference to the Orlando nightclub shooting, which happened in the summer of 2016.
Right.
Trump was not president yet. So that's what he was speaking in reference to. But Trump was also saying we will protect them from a foreign hateful ideology. So it was actually Trump using gay people to demagogue against Muslims, right? And DeSantis clipped it out of context. Well, not totally out of context, but to make it look like that was, you know, somehow more woke than he is. But, you know, it was at Trump's RNC that Peter Thiel, by the way, shout out to our Rumble audience. See, now we're mentioning Peter Thiel in a positive light, which, as I understand, we're allowed to do on Rumble. So we are simping for Peter Thiel here, right?
Does he own Rumble? Is that?
I think he owns Rumble,
on?
right? It's major investment. That's the name you're not allowed to criticize, I think.
I
But when he took the stage, he says, I'm a proud gay man, a proud American, and a proud
Trump
Republican.
said that?
No, that was Peter Thiel said that on the stage. The room erupted in applause. It was this very moving moment. And even
hang on,
Trump,
Peter Thiel is gay?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Yeah, Peter Thiel's gay, right?
I did not know that.
Yeah, openly gay libertarian billionaire. You made me self-conscious there.
Know,
I had to check it because I'm like, I hope that better be right. Otherwise
No,
I'm
that's
have egg on
funny,
my
man.
face.
I didn't know that.
Well, he said on the floor of the RNC, I'm a proud gay man, a proud Republican, a proud American, and they gave him a standing ovation. Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, Trump, even someone as demagogic as Trump was always smart enough to keep his sort of bullying to people for their actions. In other words, illegal immigrants, right? He would demagogue against them, but they were people who took an action. They crossed the border illegally. Even during the George Floyd protests, he would say, if you draw a dick and balls on Thomas Jefferson, you go to jail for 10 years, right? As batshit as that was, and as divisive and as vile as that was, he was talking about people who took an action that he didn't approve. Right. He knew I cannot explicitly target the human being themselves. Even in the case of Islam, he's talking about a religious belief. He's talking about a set of ideas, right? Even he didn't take it to that point, which I would argue is part of why he had the most diverse coalition of any Republican in decades in 2020. More Latinos voted for Trump than any GOPer since the Dixiecrat switcheroo there. African American, same thing, right? So if you're trying to get to the right of him, the only way to get to the right of Trump on this is to go in such an extreme way that even Karl Rove says, whoa, you got to pull back, right?
Well,
when you start getting to the right of Trump on these kinds of issues, it means you've gone way too far, because Trump himself knows he pushes it right. Like, if Trump could get away with going any further, he would, but he knows he can't. And so, yeah, I do think this was, on balance, an error, because most conservatives now are not on board with bullying gay people, right? And this was bullying. This was a bullying, trolling, divisive, intentionally divisive ad.
Well, a lot of us said during the Trump years that a lot of the actions that were being taken by the establishment left or the Democrats or whatever you want to call them were going to make Trump's successor make Trump look like a birthday present. And DeSantis definitely qualifies as that figure. I would also posit, and again, this is going to be another running theme, and this is going to particularly come up with Anna. All right, so conservatives, right? They try to hold things in society where they are, right? Kind of by definition, right? They're telling you, hang on, check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? And the progressives' whole reason for existing is to make you accept the new thing, right? Oh, that was yesterday. This is the new thing. I would argue that part of what's happening here is that the Republicans are basically in the place with gay rights that Democrats were 10 years ago. And it's a place that people are pretty happy with. That's a place that people are comfortable, right? And then you have this progressive movement. It's like, nah, man, drag brunch for your kids. And they're not comfortable with that. So this is why I think you find yourself in this strange place where Karl Rove is reasonable on this issue, and Trump is relatively reasonable about this issue, and DeSantis is going back to an older Republican Party that doesn't exist anymore on this issue. However, I do think his signaling here is meant to go for the kind of like, feeling emasculated, kind of frustrated Andrew Tate, very online right-wing male. And on that level, I think it's an effective ad. And long-term politically, okay, suppose he wins those people over. Can he not tack in a way that like do more, Rove generation and establishment conservatives feel that strongly about it, that 6 months from now, that's going to determine how they vote? I don't think so. It depends on how he plays.
Well, it's funny. I mean, that's another question, but that's an interesting question because Karl Rove is not just a dug-in Republican partisan and right-wing ideologue. He is also pretty anti-Trump. Right, like if he has a horse he's backing, it's DeSantis, right? Like I have no doubt in my mind. You ask Karl Rove in private, hey, who you voting for? Right. No doubt in my mind. Right. And so that is an interesting question.
So long term, does it really hurt him with those people? I don't think so. It depends what he does between now and then. The old saying is true. American politics can change overnight. Like people writing DeSantis's obituary now, it's fucking absurd.
I'll tell you, I mean, it hurts him with me. I mean, I think the guy's just really a sick motherfucker. I mean, the guy's a fucking bastard. Like, if I were in a Republican primary, I'd vote for Trump over DeSantis any day.
I get it. Yes, Trump is much less dangerous than DeSantis.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm saying. I mean, a lot of people predicted this during the Trump years, that what comes after Trump is going to make
once you
people
get the smart
nostalgic for Trump.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right, exactly. All right, well, we did a pretty good job. It is 9:58, and we are going to start our Anna segment in just a moment. Let's take a couple super chats before we do. Courtney, thank you very much. My friend Chris did the whole join the theater for chicks, went after every last one of us, too. But all the rest of the guys were gay. Yeah, well, that's what Russell's point is that you don't have much competition as a straight guy in the theater scene, right? It's slim pickings for the girls in the company because most of the guys are gay. Most of the guys are gay. Although I tell you,
straight man paradise.
Right.
I would argue it's better than being in a band.
Yeah, probably, perhaps. I mean, I've never been in a band. I've always been into music. I've loved music. I play guitar. I play a little trumpet, a little piano. Not really good enough to do it in a band. But I have the Jewiest reason ever for never joining a band, which is way too much schlepping. Way too much. The lugging.
You didn't want to carry the equipment.
No, it's hell. It's torture. And the juice is not worth the squeeze, man. Like, I know friends who play in bands. It takes a half hour loading the drums into the truck. Then they get to pull up. Then they got to load the shit out. Then they got to wire everything up at the venue. They play for an hour. Then they got to break it all down at the venue, lug it back to the truck, drive it home, take it from the truck into the garage. It's torture. It's like 5 hours of manual labor for an hour of playing music. It's
like
it's
the
not
man
worth it.
said, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
Exactly. Not worth it in my view. Jennifer Williams, thanks to the $9.99. Did I miss where the majority report acknowledged that MSNBC lied about the Hunter laptop? No, that's a good point. We should have raised that point during that segment, but thank you for making that point. That's a good one. Maybe they were just busy snorting the cocaine he left in the White House. Yeah, left a little stuff behind.
A little residue.
We'll talk about that on Friday because Politico just put out a piece that says the White House doesn't expect to find out who the cocaine was from. This is expected to be a cold case. We're not. Yeah, the White House apparently issued a statement where it turns out it doesn't look like we're going to be able to trace this back to its owner.
It is like a snowstorm in this place. We have it could be anybody's.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Who knows? Sorry. Oops. See, did I just do that? No, I didn't. Okay. Sorry. See, I almost blocked the person who just gave us that super chat. It's very, very close. There's a star right next to the block.
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
Yeah, so that was a close call. Justin Watson, thanks for the $2. VG kids dissed us and your audience. Typical.
Oh yeah, that was.
It was a way back. Way back. That was funny. They said, "Yeah, we appeal to the most depraved and delusional audience in this space."
915 of you waking delusional wonders.
915 of you depraved wonders. Get us to 1,000. Can we get to 1,000? Hit that like button so the algorithm invites more people in here. Share this stream. Let's see if we can get to 1,000 live viewers. Roger Meadows, thank you for the $5, my friend. I tweeted an invite to your DD account. Jose Vega sent our DM group to attend AOC Town Hall at 6 tomorrow. Russell, come through with your camera. I won't be able to make it. Oh, is Jose planning to disrupt the town hall tomorrow?
That's tomorrow.
Interesting. Jose may bring the ruckus, as they say. Non-violent ruckus, of course, just so everybody knows. Russell, a true metalhead would never attack the Baroque.
I thought that was funny. But sir, I mean, I like the Baroque. But
it's a good reference. Yeah.
Nobody mentions it in the same breath as the Renaissance.
The Baroque was a very underrated period. I don't know.
It was very underrated. Yeah.
Everybody talks about the Renaissance. They don't talk about the Baroque. Bennett Weiss, that's my dad again. Thank you. 6th grade sex ed could do a lot to thwart the spread of AIDS by warning young boys not to. Oh, yeah. Okay. Very good.
What is it with the fucking gerbils the last two shows?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to talk about the gerbils.
Yeah. What is the best way to support you? Patreon or Substack?
Emotionally.
Emotionally, right. We have a Patreon and we have a Substack account. And either one of those is great. You could join through YouTube. But if you join through Patreon and Substack, you get call-in access to these shows as well as access to our supporter-exclusive live streams, which air twice a month. So we just did our second one of June on the 30th, actually, last day of the month, and that was a fun show. But yes, patreon.com/DoDissidents or DoDissidents.substack.com. Thank you very much for your curiosity, and thank you, of course, for your support. All right, folks.
We may have the most depraved audience on YouTube, but we also have perhaps the most educated. I mean, people are throwing around the Rococo in here. I'm very impressed, folks. I was a theater art double major.
What's that?
They're talking about the Rococo. It was an art period. It was an art style.
Yeah, I never heard of that.
I was a theater art double major. Sometimes on tours, people will point at a cube and ask me what it is, and I'll say, I was a theater art double major, so I can say with some authority, it's garbage. That's what that is. It's absolute garbage. You have to. I mean, for my major, I had to take art history. And, so you're reading the letters these artists wrote to each other and theory and all of this. And as soon as you get into the 20th century, their cheese slides off the cracker, man. Like you're 1 second you're reading the Impressionists talking about how to really capture light on canvas. And the next second they're talking about black canvases with red dots that'll instantly enlighten people when they see the canvas. It's just all of a sudden it just goes sideways.
Yeah, I would not know about that. Couldn't argue with that. Shall we do our final segment of the evening?
Keaton was like, "Yeah, I'm not even going down that rabbit hole.
Can't go down that rabbit hole.
I'm not doing it, motherfucker.
We're running on time tonight, so yeah.
Yeah.
Let's keep to it. Here we go.
Nobody wants our views on the Rokuka.
Right, exactly. 939 of you in the chat. Please hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, it's very important. And the like button will help get some more people in here. See if we can crack 1,000 tonight. Anna leaves the left. That's the name of our final segment here. Anna Kasparian appeared on the Adam and Sitch podcast for a 2-hour conversation that is being described and branded as her "Why I Left the Left" moment. So we have some pieces of material that we are going to play here, a few different clips from the interview that we'll get to. What I will say at the outset, my thesis here is that much of what she says in the interview, I did not think was particularly unreasonable. However, I do think that Anna and Cenk have really made their bed when it comes to this situation.
They are reaping what they have sown.
They are reaping what they have sown.
Maybe we'll pull this clip for Friday because we're going to do a 2-parter on this. We're going to do most of the reaction from other online people on Friday. But we actually did a segment a few months back where Cenk, right after they had been blaming, Tim Pool for the shooting, right after they did that segment.
I forget when it was, yeah.
Cenk went on and talked about how he was for more gun restrictions, except for trans people, because trans people are so under assault that they need to arm themselves. And right after that was the shooting at the Christian school in Tennessee. So is he, by the logic that they were attributing the other shooting to Tim Pool, even more so was Cenk responsible, and I don't think he is responsible, but even more so would he be held responsible. He was literally feeding this atmosphere of paranoia and apocalypse that's fed by the most fringe activists, that they need to arm themselves because, right wingers are gonna break into their houses. I could, and I more or less have, find you dozens of images of trans activists attacking people. Can you find me an image of 3 hours of a trans person locked in a room with people outside screaming for their blood? Find it. I want to see it.
Well, you're talking about the Riley Gaines incident. I mean, when it comes to this particular topic and this particular focus, I would say that, a lot of the rhetoric that they have engaged in, not just on that issue, but on lots of issues. I mean, this goes back years and years and years. They have engaged in a lot of the cheap and dismissive and reductive discourse that now Anna is falling victim to herself. And she acts like, where did this come from? Well, what do you mean, where did this come from? You guys have cultivated this. Now, to Anna's credit, she does do a mea culpa on certain issues, the Rittenhouse issue being one of them. She was absolutely demagoguing against people who were saying, hey, what's being reported about this Rittenhouse case in the media is biased. A lot of it is just blatantly false. There are a lot of lies by omission in this case. You had to look far and wide to even find out that Rittenhouse's victims were white. I mean, they played fast and loose with that. They made it very, very specific not to mention that in many, many articles that were written, many of the TV reports. And there's no doubt that TYT was all about reducing everyone who was saying, hey, wait a minute, laws being what they are, because look, I think Kyle Rittenhouse is a little punk, obviously, but laws being what they are, there was absolutely no way to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he should have been locked up for decades of his life. You have to be able to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt to render a guilty verdict. And if I wrote the laws in this country, the very act of bringing a weapon like that into a situation like that would establish violent intent. You could not, past that point, claim self-defense. You bring a weapon like that into that situation, we are considering that an incitement and an escalatory act. But those are not the laws on the books in Wisconsin. And so given that, he was absolutely overcharged, and there was absolutely no way to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty of what the state charged him with. She realized that after the fact, but let's not pretend that she wasn't part of creating this just completely irrational, delusional, knee-jerk, reductive atmosphere that she's now on the receiving end of, right? And she's now having to, deal with the consequences of having cultivated an audience of simplistic, incurious, sort of left-adjacent libs who don't have the critical analysis of anything that she's sort of trying to verse herself in right now. All right, so that's the broad take, and then we'll get into the videos in a minute.
It's interesting that you say that because friend of show, at least insofar as you used a clip of us with Savvy once, Greg Foreman, whose channel, The Black Conservative, I always say, he is the hardest working man on YouTube, because I swear to God, before anyone knows it's trending, that motherfucker has a 20-minute video about it. It is unbelievable. But he's been following the Anna conversion story for a while. He's been very on that. And his framing has been, I think, correct, that she's realizing what a lot of what she advocates for implies for a white woman like her, and she doesn't like it. Now that a lot of these things that she's advocated for are impacting her, now she's whistling a different tune. Now that they're coming for her, now she has. So he's been all over that. Like every time she's had one of these things that have gotten her attacked, he said, well, you liked it before, and now all of a sudden these people are coming for you. Now you don't like it so much. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Now that she's becoming a victim of the lynch mob that she helped to create, more and more she's speaking out against it. So is there, like, I think she's being sincere, but at the same time, it wasn't until her own interests were threatened by what she had created that she started to realize that she created a monster.
Right. She was very happy to smear Aaron Mate as an Assadist, right? She was very happy to attack Jimmy Dore over the Rittenhouse stuff when that was all going down. And, those are just two names that come to mind immediately. But, the list goes on. We know we've covered TYT quite a bit on this show, right? But anyway, let's get to some of these video clips because there are a few that we got to play here. So the first one is just a sort of broad diagnosis of the left's unwillingness to engage honestly in honest conversation when they have honest disagreements with some more right-wing thinkers. Let's hear this.
Right now is, what I see happening right now is, I want the left to engage in the argument as opposed to what I see happening, which is them engaging in like ad hominem in a lot of cases, character assassination or statements about the individual's character based on their preconceived notions and based on what they heard other streamers say about the individual. It's like, okay, just take a step back for a second. You need to address the point that this person is making. And if you're not addressing the point that this person is making, and instead you're turning around and throwing all sorts of like accusations at them to make them seem like they're immoral or they're bad people, then that tells me that you don't really have an answer to what they're saying, And I see that happening more when it comes to culture war related issues as opposed to economic issues. And that's the other thing. I mean, I think that the left has completely, and they'll deny this, but I mean, just go to Twitter right now. They've like abandoned economic policies and instead hyper-focused on incredibly divisive, like identity related issues, right?
Yeah.
And and like their take is always, oh, well, the other side wants us they're racist, that's why. They're transphobic, that's why. And it's like, no, you got to do more than that. So if you're going to, if you're going to refute what they're saying, then actually address the points they're making. And if you're not going to do that, you're going to come out looking incredibly weak and childish.
All right. So, once again, this is in keeping with my overall take. Like, I don't really have an issue with anything she said there. On the other hand, that is a result of instructing people to vote for Democrats year after year, despite voicing your objections to them on these economic policy grounds. Like, yeah, how do you think the left became obsessed with identity politics issues? Because that's the beat that the Democrats have been on since 2016, when they insisted there would be no real economic platform within the party. So as long as you funnel support into that organization, of course those things are going to become dominant. And TYT has been a guilty party, in my view, of doing that. That's number one. Now, number two, where I think she does have a reasonable point to make, is that there is a denialism on the left of certain problems. Now, again, Cenk came out and said he was voting for Rick Caruso for mayor of LA. I don't believe Anna ever came out and said that explicitly, but I know she shared a couple of posts of his and sort of promoted him, subtly at times. So it's possible, if not likely, that she did herself. And if she's on the record saying she didn't, I will retract that, obviously. But from what I could tell, it seems she probably did. So that's a disagreement that I would share with Anna for sure, is how, okay, once you acknowledge a certain set of information, at that point it is the job of the left to go out and win the argument. So where she's correct to say is that, like, the left doesn't have to deny that there's an uptick in crime or that crime is making cities unsafe or unpleasant, right? That doesn't have to be a victory for the right. In other words, you don't have to follow from there to, well, I'm supporting Caruso. Because a lot of people on the left would acknowledge that, yes, while crime is a problem, we understand that when you put the Giuliani or the Caruso or the Paul Vallis, in Chicago's case, in charge, all that happens is more cops, more jails, and higher rents for everybody else. These are basically landlord mayors. And so there is a reason to engage and say, okay, we acknowledge crime is on the rise. We acknowledge crime is a problem, but we are going to approach this from a more progressive point of view. That is what the people of Chicago just did. And this is not to sing the praises of Brandon Johnson. I don't really have much faith in him, but he was the progressive alternative to Paul Vallis. So the people of Chicago did not deny the existence of crime or the problem of crime. 63% of people in that city admitted that they felt unsafe on the street. Yet they voted for the progressive over the right-wing candidate. So there's an insecurity among so much of the left, and that's what she's really getting at there. That's what she's getting at there. There's this real insecurity that if we acknowledge the facts of the case, it means we cannot win the argument. That insecurity is born of a shallow political analysis. And my main critique of Anna and Cenk these past few years is that they have fostered that shallow political critique, right? They have not embraced an actual left alternative to the status quo. They have towed the line between progressive rebels and then, when it counts, before Election Day, loyal Democrats. So what you have are a bunch of very confused people who don't really have an actual critique of the system, and so that makes them very confused when you go in this other direction. Well, now you're just denying reality, right? If you don't admit that, crime is a problem or that there are excesses of the trans movement and things like that, right? Well, yeah, sure they are. Sure they are, but you taught them to do that, right? I mean, this is part of how you got here. And I do think her awakening here is sincere. I don't think she's grifting. I mean, she's putting herself in a very precarious spot here. She doesn't know what tomorrow brings.
There's no
right? She's too far left for the Daily Wire. They're not going to take her, right?
I mean, they would if she went full in that direction,
but she's not going to, because she's got more brains than that. Like Dave Rubin is a fucking empty-headed moron, right? He always was, and so he'll just do whatever. I think it's sincere, so she's just not gonna. She's not suddenly gonna have a on the road to Damascus revelation, and then start grifting, right? Like, this is in her mind getting away from what she would perceive as a grift now that she's had this realization. It is funny, and we'll get into it a little bit tonight and more on Friday. In many ways, all these people attacking them are their children. This is their children. This is their children going after mom and dad, right? Cenk and Anna birthed all these channels. The Humanist Report, Majority Report, David Dole. I mean, a lot of them were in partnership with the Young Turks.
Humanist Report, he just
they were on their network,
left their network, and I don't know if that ever got resolved because he wasn't able to remonetize himself.
He did
after
get
he left.
So
he did get it resolved.
Back,
That's why he's not ranting about it anymore.
I guess so, yeah.
He stopped having a nervous breakdown on air. So this is really mom and dad moving away from, and this is, I think, what you're getting at. They raised them to think the way they think. They raised them to be these knee-jerk, have this very oversimplified perspective to boil everything down to the MAGAs and transphobes. That's how you raise them. It's
of course
it's like the old drug ad. I learned it from watching you.
Well, they raised them to feel like anyone who bucks the party line is doing it because they're grifting and drifting to the right wing. How many hit pieces did they run against Jimmy for taking positions on things that didn't fit the party line? Right. And so now she takes a position that doesn't fit the party line. Of course they're going to come for her.
Right. They created this environment of absolute conformity. And Shank, look, with her, and this is the woman, and again, we'll get more into this Friday. This is the woman who went on there and said, I'm better than you, right? Now, with Shank, I feel, I never really felt with her that she's just putting on a show. I felt like this is really who she is. Shank's putting on a show. Like, I've seen Shank do very intentional faking that he lost it for a minute, like dropping the F-bomb and then catching himself. Look, man. Shank's been on the air a long time. He don't drop the F-bomb by accident. He doesn't have moments like that. Right? That's for the drama. God, you fucking monster!
Yeah.
Come on, man. It's a fucking show. It's a fucking show. So I don't know what Shank believes, if anything. He could very well simply be a guy moving from opportunity to opportunity, depending on which way the alternative media space goes. What happens between the two of them now is interesting. That's obviously a very complex, deep, long-standing relationship that they have as partners, and I'm sure friends after all these years. What is he going to do? Because you cannot tell me with their audience that she's not a liability to him now. Because as you say, she's not right-wing enough that all of a sudden the Daily Wire is going to start watching TYT. That's not going to happen just because she had this revelation.
No.
You're only going to lose audience because of who they've been. Their audience is the core, the heart, the Death Star, so to speak. It is the ultimate concentration of these MSNBC 2.0 people. It's the people who want MSNBC just a little younger, a little more accessible, a little closer to the ground, a little more relatable. That's their audience. That audience, this is not going to play well for them.
No, oddly enough, this is more the Jimmy Dore audience, which is, yes, they are left-wing.
And they hate her so much, they're not coming over there.
But what I'm saying is they drove this wedge between their audience and the Dore audience, which is not exactly our audience, but, if we're dividing into schools here, right, like the Harry Potter things, this would be the House of Dore and they would be the House of TYT, right, the top dogs at each camp, right, exactly. Yes. And so they really intentionally, hey, 1,001 people.
Of Jimmy
we got 1,000 people in here. Thank you very much, folks. We had 1,000 earlier, then some of you dropped off. Look at that. But yeah, they really created this environment where if you stray from them, it's because you are drifting to the right and you are a bad faith actor, is what they said about Jimmy. It's what they've said about Mate. They've attacked Greenwald for this very thing, right? And now she's saying, oh, wait a minute. Some of the stuff about Rittenhouse wasn't true. Oh, wait a minute. Puberty blockers can be permanent? Oh, I didn't know that. So let me modify my position on these issues. And as soon as you modify, what happens? The people who you trained to identify anyone who modifies as being a right-wing grifter, they all called you a right-wing grifter. Who could have seen that one coming? Right? All right. So let's go to the second clip here. This is when she describes her reaction to this perceived shift. She calls out the leftist mafia. We did a segment on the leftist mafia attacking her over the "Call Me a Woman" gate thing, where she put out a tweet saying, "I don't want to be called a birthing person. I want to be called a woman." And they roasted her for it. A lot of people who, as Russell mentioned, were in the under the TYT umbrella, Dole, Humanist Report. That may have been all of them. I don't think, what's his name? I don't think the toothpaste guy, Lance from the Surfs. I don't think they're TYT affiliated. No. But so she calls out the leftist mafia and makes mention of Olayemi Olurin, which we will have more to say on in a moment. But here is her explaining the reaction to her sort of, leaving the left in certain ways, shall we say.
Not been great. The reaction has not been great. I mean, look, that leftist mafia stream was unbelievable to me. Like the accusations that were thrown out there, Olay implying that I'm racist because as a woman, I don't want to be called a birthing person. Like race didn't come up at all until she brought it up. And then she was the only one on that stream who brought race into it and like made it abundantly clear that she's got an issue with white women and just thinks they're all the same and like, whatever. and then after I basically called her out on it, she's like, "Oh, you're attacking me and only me because I'm black." And it's like, no, you're the only one in that group of people who attacked me and accused me of being racist because I personally want to be called a woman.
All right. So there you have that. Now, she mentioned Olayemi, in the initial reaction to that, and then she brought her up here. So our other friends of the show here over at the Sling Blade Meets Boys Don't Cry show, they're the Vanguard. They were doing a reaction stream to this interview. I think this was yesterday. May have been yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday, though. And they talked about the Olay stuff, and Olay was very compelled to call into the show. So here she calls in. She
doesn't like drama.
She doesn't like drama, right. So she calls into the Vanguard show to respond to Anna calling her out a second time. Here's Olay calling in. This is her reaction to what we just heard.
Y'all, let me explain this to y'all. I don't care for all of this. Like, Anna, let me be fucking clear. Keep my name out your mouth. The only reason why anybody even mentioned you, because I don't even think you matter. I don't even give a fuck about your white-centered view in the world. And also because you keep, I'm Armenian, but they keep saying I'm white passing. Whiteness is a construct. Maybe you should read a fucking book before you present like you the queen of the fucking leftist liberal movement. It's a construct. Am I looking at a white blonde woman? Is that how you walking through the earth? White lady. And now you want to act like, they're the ones that are racist because they assumed when I started peddling propaganda that I was talking about black people. So y'all are the racists and not really what's really bothers me. Girl, get the fuck out of here. You know what the fuck you doing all in Newsweek talking shit. Okay? You and Cenk are both full of fucking shit and y'all need to hush your fucking mouths because I'm over it. That is what I got to say about that.
Yeah. No, I totally feel you, Olay.
That's the best part. We're pulling that as a sound drop.
I totally feel you, Olay. I mean, what a fucking lunatic. I'm sorry. A lunatic.
Whenever we have like an absurdly white person trying to ingratiate themselves with a black person, we're going to drop that sound.
I totally feel you, Olay.
I totally get where you're coming from, man.
I totally get where you're coming from. Holy shit, man. I mean, this right here, what we just played, that last minute, this is what is being purged from the left right now. And this is a running theme of the entire stream. Like, what you just heard there, and these dumbasses nodding along, yeah, no, totally feel you. If you want any left-wing progress in your lifetime, you are never getting it as long as your movement is represented by this shit. Ever.
Yes.
Never,
yes.
ever.
Yes.
Keep my name out your mouth. Whiteness is a concept. What do you mean keep? First of all, what do you mean keep her name out of your mouth? You're a public figure. You're in this game. You called into the Vanguard show. They are a gossip drama show. Exactly. I'm sorry. You don't get to tell people keep your name out of their mouth. Right. You make yourself a figure for public consumption.
Right.
To these Vanguard guys,
nobody asked her to do that. She's a lawyer,
nobody asked
right?
you to do that. Yeah,
nobody
right.
would
She a
be
lawyer
talking
or something
about
like that.
She's
yeah,
stuck to the law.
Right. If you don't want to be talked about,
on here.
then don't come in and start talking about people, right? I mean, to the Vanguard guys' credit, they're good sports about it. They never say people should not talk about us or not, dunk on us. The Lord knows we've done a lot of it, right? Fair is fair, right? So what do you mean keep my name out of your mouth? I mean, I don't understand. She said she didn't want to talk about Anna, but the leftist mafia kept going on. And after a while, she just had to chime in that they were going easy on her because she's white, which, first of all, what an idiotic take. They're going easy on her because they're her proteges. They're TYT affiliated
and they
channels.
started out on her channel.
Right. It's not because
and
she's
actually,
white.
Humanist Report was still under their channel.
At the time,
At that time.
And Dole was part of TYT too, I believe. So that's
he
why.
Hasn't gone out on his own.
He hasn't crossed out of the network yet.
No,
okay.
I don't know.
So that's why they were a little bit easy on her because they're
let us
friends with her, and they're involved, in some business capacity with them, right? It's not because she's a white lady. I mean, what a ridiculous take. What an absurd thing to say, and to call in and to just rant like that, as if this is making any sense to anybody. And this is what I mean.
If whiteness is a construct, why are you attacking her as a white lady?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
The whole thing.
The whole thing was just absolutely psychotic.
It was completely batshit. And at one point, she says, that she doesn't like drama. She avoids drama. If you haven't been blocked by her yet, because
we both are.
Big,
yeah.
she's big on the blocking. But if you go and you look at her Twitter is basically that. It is a litany of these people who do this and those people who do that. And these people have to shut the fuck up. And these people are doing this. That's all it is. It's drama. It's drama. It's calling out white people. What you just saw, that's her Twitter feed. Drama. Nothing but drama.
Of course. But also, the other thing that I just have to add about this is, Anna was all bothered by what the leftist mafia had to say about her, right? The leftist mafia is an outgrowth of TYT. And none of these channels are relevant. Notice no one is asking David Dole or Mike Figueredo or certainly not the Vanguard guys, right? Or Lance from the Serves. When did they get invited on like The Rising Show or, any other podcast of note that's like at all outside their echo chamber? When does anybody ask, hey, I wonder what these guys think?
Olay
right?
was on Rising, right? And then they
well, she has certain
around.
areas of expertise because she's a lawyer, so I'm sure she was invited on to discuss those kinds of related issues. But like these people, these leftist mafia types, these are not any kind of thought leaders. No. Like no one gives a shit.
No, you're right. They're
no
never invited on. And they've been around for years, and they have like good sub counts, and they still don't get asked on.
Right.
Exactly. You know, got asked on? Sabby.
Right. Sabby goes on the Hill. Right.
Because she's credible.
Right.
She's credible. She's somebody worth listening to. They recognized that and invited her on.
Right. Right. Exactly. And it's not just the Hill, but just in terms of an ecosystem, right? In terms of getting asked around places that are sometimes outside of your comfort zones. When does who the hell cares what the leftist mafia has to say about fucking anything? It's irrelevant.
Right.
And
Who
here
wants to hear
Anna
that
is
take?
getting all preoccupied with what they have to say. Once again, this is a monster that you guys created, right?
Right.
Like
that's the irony here.
Right. There would be no leftist mafia without TYT.
Right.
Right. And the fact that Anna, this person of prominence, I mean, she co-hosts, one of the most popular shows in the history of YouTube, right? Almost 6 million subscribers and things like that. And before the late great Michael Brooks passed away, she did a show with him on Jacobin's YouTube channel. So like she got out there. She's a person of prominence, and you're concerning yourself with some fucking weird ass like leftist mafia cartoon supergroup. Like, why do you care? Like, this is not a relevant group of people whose opinions you're all of a sudden very offended by. Like, most people look at these spaces and they think, who the hell are they and why do we care about them? The only reason anybody at all cares about them is because of the Young Turks, and now here you are saying, well, how could they have burned me like this? Nobody else gives a shit. Like, they're not important. You shouldn't have been bothered by what they have to say. Who the fuck cares? what David Dole or Mike Figueredo or that fucking cartoon shitlib with the eye, the Illuminati, who got canceled
Well,
for
she's got
I don't know what
canceled
she
for
did. She fucking fucked the Roadrunner
using
in
a
the ass
crew
or
or
something like that. Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know, but like,
she
who
was
cares?
part of the reason the Elementals movie tanked.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, who the hell knows, right? But like, this is just a fake space. It's a meaningless space that you have cultivated. And so,
Right.
what their opinion of you matters to you? Why? Right?
It's a good point. I think because they're all in the same ecosystem, and because I'm sure she has personal relationships.
But that is my
with a lot.
point.
And didn't she say that at some point in the interview that
Yes.
it was a little surprising to her to have people that she knew personally that know her come at her now?
Yeah, but that's my point.
Like specifically when she said she didn't want to be called a birthing person, that she was a little surprised a lot of people she had personal relationships with in the space came at her.
Right, but that's my point, is that this is an irrelevant ecosystem. Like this is not a space that is having any influence on anything. In fact, people in this ecosystem are losing. They are a liability for the left. The left is recognizing that, and the left is starting to weed them out.
Finally.
Anna herself is doing that now. This is her way of doing that, right? She's too close to the inside of it to do it all at once. But that's why this is all happening to her. That's why she's being dragged like this, because she's not in a position, I don't think, to just make a clean break, right? Because she co-hosts the show, right? This was the godfather of the online left, right? And so, that to me is one of the ironies of this. Right. It's just one of these things where it's like, okay, you're disavowing the very ecosystem that you helped create here.
Well, in a way,
but you're still too close to it to just wash your hands of these fucking people who no one looks to for any thought or influence at all.
While I think it's sincere, in some ways she's having her Oprah moment here. Because that was basically Oprah's trajectory. Like, nobody ever calls her out on this now. Oprah created trash TV. Like, Oprah created Jerry Springer. Before Oprah, the whole, do a panel on lesbian nuns, that didn't exist. You're the king of the daytime was Phil Donahue. And he did a very straight show. Those shows were very sedate. It was for ladies having their coffee in the afternoon. He might have on the Secretary of State. It was very, very, or a celebrity or something. It was a little lighter than evening news. She was the one who nobody had ever seen anything like that before, right? She was the one who opened up the gates to the freak show. And then once Jerry Springer caused a backlash, that mother, I will never forget it. She wrote a fucking op-ed about how horrible that was, how horrible the Jerry Springers and the Montels, how terrible that was for the country. And she came back the next season with a different set and basically Phil Donahue's old show. She came back doing Phil Donahue's show. It's kind of that.
Yeah.
It's kind of that. Like, she created these people.
Of course, yeah.
And now she's trying, and look, Cenk is no dummy. He's a good businessman, obviously. Maybe he does want the whole channel to go in that direction. And, did she get permission from Cenk to do that? Like, again, I don't feel like she's faking this. But did she have a sit down with him? And did he say, you know what, that's fine. Actually, I've been kind of wanting the channel to move more in that direction because I think all that shit is about to crash and burn and we want to get away from the blast radius.
Well, that's the thing. That to me is what this is all an indication of. If there's a theme that's sort of, one theme for this show, it's that. It's that there's the sense that a lot of people in their faction of this space have gotten a lot of things wrong. And not only have they encouraged them to get these things wrong, but they have insisted that they must condemn anyone who took a different point of view. Right. And
Grifters.
So now they're in a bit of a trap, right? They got themselves into a little bit of a corner here. Anyway, here's the last clip that we're going to play of Anna. This is an interesting one.
Is it the bonus hole one? People want to
no.
hear the bone.
Actually,
you didn't. How did you not clip?
Well, actually, no. We're gonna have 2 more. I couldn't clip it because we can only show 10 video files here, but I will find it. Don't worry. But this is Anna talking about how she's uncomfortable now talking to non-white people because she's afraid that she might accidentally say the wrong thing. Here we go.
I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I'm a little scared or like I'm afraid of like talking to people who are outside of my race because I don't know if I'm going to unintentionally step in it, right?
Yeah.
Like there's, and I hate that. I hate that.
Right.
Like there's this like, I don't know. It's like frigid, because like if all of the message is toward me and people who, you know, I'm Armenian, but still they call me white passing. So, you know, just got to go with that, right? If people who look like me are constantly told, you are inherently racist. Okay, you are inherently a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's the start, and I had this debate with Cenk when it came to our rhetoric in regard to the other side, right? If the starting off point is you are trash and we think you're evil,
Yeah,
then
totally.
how does that, you're never going to move in a better direction. You're not going to move the country in a better direction. You're not going to improve race relations. You're going to make it worse. And that is what I see happening. I think a lot of the division is due to the backlash to that kind of rhetoric.
Okay, once again, this being a product of an environment that you helped nurture, right? And helped grow.
You encouraged it.
You encouraged
you
it,
jumped
man.
out in front of that parade. They didn't create it, but they jumped out in front of it. They
course.
certainly championed it, pushed it.
Right.
They could have gone in another direction. You know, they could have, they could have gone more in the Jimmy Dore direction. Like, hey, why are we getting caught up in all of this corporate-driven DEI, ESG bullshit? We want healthcare. You could have gone that way. You didn't. You chose not to.
Right. You chose to make issues out of these identity politics matters, which attracts people who are out to one-up other people. See, this is the thing. The lib-adjacent left, right, which is what the sort of TYT channel has turned into, they don't have any real political convictions at the end of the day. It's all one-upsmanship. It's all gamesmanship. And so how do you score points in that space? You score points by proving that you are woker than whoever's standing next to you. How do you do that? You call them out on a problematic thing that they said, that they didn't intend that way, right? That's how you do it. You cut them, whoa, what do you mean? Right? What was that? What was that? You just let your prejudice slip out. You just unmasked yourself by accident, right? You don't have to worry about that if you hang out with the right people. We co-host a regular panel show with RBN. I don't feel like I'm Russell and I, in case you haven't noticed, a couple white guys. I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells on that show. I don't feel like, yeah, right, exactly. I don't feel like, oh, if I say the wrong thing, CJ's gonna jump down my throat. No,
I do feel that way about China.
Yeah, but I mean, not in terms of like being called a racist. You don't feel that way.
No.
Like, I don't feel like, oh, if I say the wrong thing, they're going to jump down my throat because, you just said something that we are going to deliberately misinterpret and, to give you some, ill motive. We're going to put this ill intent on you. No. But you know why those guys don't act like that? Those guys don't take that approach because they're serious, smart people with actual left politics.
It's not
That's
a show.
The key.
It's
not
not
a show. It's not a performance. It's not a social club to them. They have actual politics, right? Whereas the crowd that TYT has cultivated, they do not. Politics to them is proving to the person next to them that they're woker than the person 2 doors down or 2 people down. That's all it is. It's just a race to the top, right? It's the woke Olympics over there. That's all it is there. That's all it is on Majority Report. All these channels, same thing. It's a leftist mafia. It's all about proving to each other how woke they are and how much woker they are than people who claim to be enlightened and woke and hip and, quote unquote, real left. That's the game. It's a game. And that's why Anna feels she's walking on eggshells because she's hanging with the wrong crowd. But that's the crowd that she created. That's the audience that she has cultivated.
Right. And it's also, as we were talking about with RBN on the last show and with Kit, we're like the third wave of political YouTube left shows. And we're not PMCs, man. We're a lot more working class. We're a lot grittier. We're a lot closer to the issues that the PMCs might like to talk about, but are not personally impacted by. Has Anna ever not had health insurance? Like, has she ever really lived without health insurance? Has Cenk? I doubt it. I doubt I went 10 years without health insurance. Probably more, actually, without health insurance. I only wound up getting health insurance because my wife made me get it. I probably still wouldn't have it. She's like, you kind of need this. Like she made me wear a bike helmet and it fucking saved my life later on.
Right.
This is why married men live longer.
Right. Yeah.
She made me get health insurance and a bike helmet.
And a helmet.
Yeah, that politics is a politics you have to be very privileged to afford. If you can, the reason that I talk as much about these things as I do is because I know it's fucking killing us. I know it's killing us to be connected to those ideas. That's the point. It's not that I find it endlessly interesting to talk about fucking gender and transing kids. I would love to. I can't wait until this wheel really turns and I can never fucking read another thing about this, never talk about this again. But as I think Anna is coming to realize, we'll never get any of the economic things we want if we do not detach ourselves in the public mind from these people, from this faction. As long as they think that's us, they're not going to listen to what we have to say about unions and healthcare.
Well, that's what I mean. I think the tide is turning. I think this is real evidence of that. It's real evidence of that, so it's really not, this is not a bad thing for the left. This is actually a very, very good thing, right?
Yes.
Because you just sense that, these arguments are starting to become settled. And once they become settled, then, you can, at the very least, know who's in and who's out. And then, you just kind of go from there. Right. But these things have to be settled first. And look, the fact that, she's right in the sense that there is just a lot of straw manning. There is just a lot of denying of the premises of the argument. Right. It's very hard to agree upon the premises of the debate when you have people who just jump to, well, you're a transphobe, or you're a racist, or like whatever the sort of knee-jerk reaction is. That's what she's saying. She's saying a lot of the elements of the left have become very knee-jerk. TYT, their knee-jerk is their game. That's it. I mean, that's all they've engaged in is knee-jerk reactions.
Right.
For almost, the past decade now, almost. That Bernie thing was the exception to them. That wasn't the rule. They saw an opportunity to really grow their audience and really capitalize off of this first Bernie campaign. And so they did it. But they haven't been the same even since. They didn't even endorse Bernie Sanders until January of 2020.
I remember
primary.
that.
They were fence sitting. They were saying, well, it's great that Warren's in the race too, because now we have two progressives, right? So they weren't even on the Bernie thing past 2016, save for like those 6 weeks, right, between Iowa and Super Tuesday, right? And, the Bernie thing was a very mild incarnation of what this space ultimately became in certain corners of it, right? I mean, we're more red-pilled than that now, even, in our space with so many of these shows, right? But they weren't even that far. They couldn't even commit to Bernie Sanders until 6 weeks before Super Tuesday in the 2020 cycle. So that whole thing, when we all subscribed to them and were hanging on their every word, that was like a year in the whatever it is, 15-year history of that project, So that's one thing you also have to keep in mind. Like, what is the real TYT? TYT has had many incarnations over the years, right? From the YouTube Howard Stern show.
They started out Howard Stern. They jumped on this Bernie thing and revamped themselves as this politics channel. And look, I mean, again, Cenk's a smart businessman. I'd be surprised if Anna said shit like this without telling him she was going to do it. I mean, maybe. I'd be surprised.
Well, they've kind of done it almost in lockstep. I mean, they've had certain disagreements. She mentioned she had certain disagreements with Cenk as part of this interview. But, Cenk has been more or less, on the same page as she has these past couple of months,
they
as
went after
indicated
him
by
for speaking out on trans sports and this kind of thing. Positions they wouldn't have taken 2 years ago, I don't think. I mean, Jesus, what was it, 6 months ago? He's talking about trans people need guns.
Right, that's what I mean.
Like, it's not that long ago.
Pivot. It was a very quick pivot, indeed. All right, should we do some super chats and then close the shop?
All right.
All righty, cool.
We are going to do a part 2 of this on Friday because it was just too much to catch up on. You got David Dole got into this, and I'm sure they're going to. I'd be very surprised if the leftist mafia does not rush out a video on this.
Yeah, we'll see. There might be more to come on Friday. This is a Rumble rant from Stone122112. Did you hear your frenemies got a mention on Rising today, but they called them the Vanguard Boys, which probably
I did hear that because that's the take I most want to get into. Brianna's was just so fucking incredibly stupid. Like it was the only time I ever doubted that she actually went to Harvard. Like what she had to say on that was absolutely absurd. And then I forget his name, the one who resigned from TYT over this.
Benny, whatever. It was a trans woman, right? Who quit.
Yeah. Literally made the argument. Well, you got all the, as if it's absurd. Well, you got these people who are concerned with giving hormone treatments to kids because they're permanent. Well, puberty is always permanent. Yes, you heard that right. The argument was that since puberty without hormone treatments is permanent, what's the big deal? Right. Why did you hire someone who would be thinking that way at TYT in the first place? This is where you're reaping what you sow. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm curious because that's who they've cultivated for their show. How many resign now? How many quit? Right? Because they're going to get shit from the wokerati if they don't quit working at TYT now. Like, do they have a mass staff exodus? I'd be very surprised if they don't get like a very strongly worded letter that they all get together and write. Anna has become deeply problematic.
Yeah, we will see. Nick Riviera, Dr. Nick Riviera, thank you. Shots fired. Keaton, this is behavior I expect from Russell, a player, a playboy, but a family man. A family man, Keaton, clutches pearls. I'm not sure what you're referring to, and it's not just because this came in a while ago. I wasn't sure what you were referring to when I first saw that you sent that. What could that have been about? I don't know. That was about an hour. That was right before we started the Anna segment. That was when we did the Ron DeSantis segment. So I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and check the tape on that, and I'll give you an answer next time. I will address your concerns next time, my friend. Roger Meadows. How did Bush push a ballot initiative in Ohio? So it was Karl Rove's idea to push for a referendum on gay marriage in Ohio in 2004. They put that as a yes or no vote. Should we allow gay marriage in the state of Ohio? And the theory behind that was that evangelical support was waning for George W. Bush, the candidate, because the Iraq War was not popular, right? It wasn't as unpopular as it should have been, but for a wartime president, his polling numbers were pretty miserable.
We didn't get greeted as liberators.
Right. And, a lot of evangelical Christians, sincerely do care about matters of war and peace and life and death, right? I mean, there are the Jerry Falwells, there are the grifters, right? But then there are a lot of Christians who were sincerely bothered by the Iraq War, right? Like they weren't on board for that. And so internal polling showed that George W. Bush's numbers amongst that cohort were waning. And so Karl Rove thought, well, if they're not going to get excited to come out and vote for George W. Bush, maybe we should put gay marriage on the ballot, because a lot of these evangelicals will come out to vote against gay marriage. And while they're there, they'll pull the lever for George W. Bush over John Kerry. That was the theory. And that ended up working like a charm. So that, in a nutshell, is how that happened.
Yep. It didn't hurt that John Kerry was like a Disney animatronic president on the fritz.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was a terrible candidate. But what else?
That was the best John Kerryism. Who among us does not love NASCAR?
Right. Well, that's another
How
indication.
did that guy
I mean,
lose?
look, Kerry was against gay marriage also, right?
Well, sure.
And at that time,
they all were.
They all
until
were.
They weren't.
They all were. And at that time, the word liberal was this insult. It was this pejorative. It was this put down. Bush used to say John Kerry is the most liberal senator in America, and John Kerry came out very emphatically and said, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. No one wanted to be called a liberal back then. This was 2004. We're not talking about fucking 1963. We're talking about 2004. You couldn't call yourself a liberal, but you couldn't.
Right.
You couldn't.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what fascists,
it was
the Bush
Reagan.
administration, where those were the real fascists, right? That was real theocratic fascism on the march. They were in power in this country 20 years ago, and we beat them back pretty quickly and pretty convincingly, to the point where now they just had the gay marriage vote. I believe half of the Republicans voted for it. Right. So this is how much progress you've made in such little time, which is one of the tragedies of this, which is one of the sad things to see a lot of that not necessarily get pulled back in a legal sense, but be really challenged in a way that you feel like all that progress you've made on the culture wars is now being forfeited and it's now being squandered.
Well, this is what I fear is going to happen, and I've made this comparison a lot. It was Reagan who made liberal a dirty word.
Yes.
I think it's hard for people who are too young to remember it, how quickly that can happen, because the Reagan thing happened overnight. 1 second, it was sex, drugs, rock and roll. The next second, it was tan suits, and the word liberal was toxic. It happened very, very quickly. And a lot of it was due to a feeling that the liberals had gone to such an excessive extent with hedonism, with sexuality, with crime, right? It was the same thing. And that's what empowered Reagan. I see it as very likely, not even possible, but likely that you get a similar phenomena where progressive becomes a dirty word. And progressive gets associated with the excesses of this period. And people are going to empower politicians who crush that. And you're going to get a major cultural shift as we did then.
Right. Sheena Braskin, thank you for the $2. I saw you chatting in the Rumble zone as well. Teal doesn't own Rumble. He's like a minority owner, right? Doesn't he own some sort of shares in it? He's not the CEO. I forget the CEO's name. But I think he does have some sort of stake in it. The Orlando guy was not anti-gay. Yeah, there were things that came out about the Orlando shooting that complicated that narrative. I remember that. It was 7 years ago. But at the time Trump made the speech, that was not known.
Yeah, that was the perception.
And that doesn't change the fundamental fact that Trump was pledging to defend, anti-LGBT. I'm sorry, he was promising to defend LGBT people from, radical Islamic terrorism, right? And that's what he was being attacked for in that video. But thank you for the donation and for the comment. Courtney, thank you for the $5. Appreciate that.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, the trans anchor quit and made a video slamming both of them as transphobic. Yes, indeed. Thank you for the $5. We appreciate that, Courtney. Velvet Trance DD knocks it out of the park once again. Thanks for another amazing show, guys. Well, thank you, Velvet Trance. We appreciate that.
Namaste.
Very much. Very kind of you. Tusker, the Vanguard is down.
They are the vanilla ice of the online life.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Ideator. There we go. Olayemi made me stop watching Rising when she hosted. Tired of people. You're black yourself. Okay. Demonizing whites. Leftist mafia is a joke. Yeah, it's a joke show. It's a joke show. And, that's an outgrowth of the TYT ecosystem. Thank you for the donation. Meteor Dreams. And got a nose job specifically to look less ethnic. Yeah, it seems like she did. Well, it seems like she did. That's what people have been giving her a hard time for, that she got a nose job. It seems like she did. I don't know why she did, I don't know what the motive was, but thank you for the one.
I mean, she does look a lot different from the Howard Stern days when
yeah, I
Chimp
think
was
she
pimping
definitely
her
got
out for
something. She
shoes.
definitely got something there.
I just figured it was like she lost her baby fat.
Yeah,
no, seriously,
no,
she was that young.
I know,
in those
but I don't know. I don't know how much baby fat you hold in your nose. Maybe you just didn't realize it was the nose.
I mean, I thought it was the shape of her face.
The shape of the
Maybe
face.
maybe it's
Interesting.
her
Okay.
nose.
Yeah, here we go. Another super chat regarding the nose. Pinocchio Kasparian's nose job and blonde hair is to look less Armenian. Interesting. Is the blonde hair not blonde? Is the hair not blonde either? Interesting. See, you guys are educating me a little bit. Can you play an Iron Maiden break?
I mean, if I keep doing it, then it's not special,
Yeah, it's gotta be special. It's gotta be special. Here,
I'll tell you what. I'll give you the Twisted Sister one.
There we go. Beautiful. That's what I was gonna ask.
All right. Yeah. We'll compromise.
You're gonna burn in hell.
Russ, long story short, when I worked at an Italian restaurant on Long Island, we had no health insurance. Our boss would send us to see his friend Dr. Ralph for on-the-arm care.
Yeah, go see Ralph.
Go
He'll
see
fix
Ralph.
you right up. What do you got? Them AIDS symptoms.
Yeah.
HIV doesn't actually cause it. My
Right.
friend's got a cure for you.
Yeah. To tell him I sent you.
You just
That's what he would
inject a
say.
little garlic sauce in your arm there. You'll be fine.
Exactly. Buckeye fan, thanks to the $4.99. I'll believe that this isn't a grift when she apologizes for smearing Dora and Mate and has convos with actual leftists like RBN, Hardlines, etc.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I mean,
look, I have mixed feelings about this because I don't want to reject a convert, right? Like, I don't want to be like, but you said this. We'll see. You're absolutely right. Now let's see what she does from here.
yeah. And look, I think what I will say is that I think that this sort of pivot can be sincere, not in and of itself a grift, while at the same time she might just hold those grudges too hard. Because
Sure.
what the thing you got to understand about people in this space, and this goes for everybody, they have massive egos. They wouldn't be in this space if they didn't have huge egos. And so once they get into it with somebody, it's one thing to apologize to this broad set of people who you may have offended with your Kyle Rittenhouse take, right? It's another thing to actually own up and admit that you wronged individual people, right? And that's something that a lot of people in this space just cannot really seem to do, whether it's this kind of space and, similar, like the world of talk radio, just extremely competitive and cutthroat. And the personalities and the conflicts are just so big and so intense that sometimes that just can't happen. But we will see. We will see. I mean, I take your point. That's what I said at the beginning of this segment.
Dor, that would be like Begin. What was it? Begin and Arafat.
Right.
That would be quite the online event.
Right. And you don't know if these guys would be down to reconcile either. You never know because, like I said, the feuds in this space are just so big and they're so amplified because of social media, because of Twitter, right? I mean, that's how these factions become factions in the first place, right? And so we'll have to wait and see about that. SB, thanks for the $5. Well, there'll be a show with figures in alt media, Black YouTube, Africa Diaspora News Channel, Tariq Nasheed, The Black Authority, TD Hip Hop Media. I mean, we would not be regulars on that show if it was an exclusively black show, but perhaps. I mean, look, RBN is. I mean, we love appearing on the channel, but I mean, it's not just Nick and CJ there. They got Savvy there. They got JB. On that show as well, Rome on that show. I mean, that's essentially kind of what they have created there, and it's obviously we think it's great stuff. That's why we're very proud and honored to be part of that show every couple of weeks. So the Post-Duopoly show is every other. Looks like we're doing it every other Monday now. It's a bi-weekly thing, yeah. But yeah, I mean, so in a sense, I think a platform like that exists more or less now. But yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's the only show of its kind really in this ecosystem, which really tells you where a lot of these people are coming from, because they're also perhaps the most attacked channel in this ecosystem. So the same people who are going to go on about whiteness, they, for some reason, they love to attack the only black channel in the space.
Yeah, indeed. Joey Peltier, hey man, I remember you from a while back. We were on a panel when the Build Back Better negotiations were heating up. That recent gay marriage bill is a states' rights affirming bill, and the Fed's ability to tax these childless couples, the GOP would support it. Well, thank you for that comment, Joey, and we'd like to actually maybe get in touch with you to come on again, because I haven't talked to you in a while. But my point more broadly with that is that to think that Karl Rove, who, like I said, engineered the 2004 election around the rejection of gay marriage, the idea that he would now be running to DeSantis's left on this and say, hey, what the hell are you doing? You're fucking yourself here. That is an indication of how things have changed. And things had changed dramatically for the better until we started to see this regression, right? It is encouraging, though, to see that even a lot of Republicans are pushing back on that DeSantis ad, because what that indicates is that you haven't completely lost it, right? They aren't completely in attack mode going the other way.
That's what we would, that would be the greatest hope, that this backlash doesn't wind up taking us back, but just simply eliminating these excesses. That's what we hope for.
Right, exactly. Alrighty, folks. Well, that is our program tonight, coming in at a crisp 3 hours and 7 minutes, it looks like. But thank you guys very much for being here. We will see you back here again Friday morning, less than 48 hours from now. So we hope you guys will all come back, and we will see you for the morning show. That's this Friday, 9 a.m. YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble. Thank you to our folks over in the Rumble chat. You are a great crowd. Thank you to you guys here on YouTube. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button on the way out. You guys were a great audience. We will have more for you guys Friday, June 7th, July 7th at 9 a.m. And then we will be back here Sunday nights at 7 p.m. So this was our inaugural Wednesday live stream. The new schedule for everybody is Wednesdays at 8, Sundays at 7, and Friday mornings at 9. They should also start covering Assange. Who's they? You mean us?
Yeah, I think it means TYT.
TYT. Well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, see, but this is the thing. This is what I'm afraid is actually going to happen. I think they'll wind up pretty much having the same positions they have, just being more anti-woke, because they can see that's a sinking ship. Know what I mean? Like, are they really going to back off on their Russiagate shit? I don't think so.
Right, probably.
I'd be very surprised.
Right. Yeah, me too. But we will see. Folks, we'll be back here Friday morning, 9 a.m. Thank you very much for being here, everybody. It was a great chat, great audience, great crowd. We will see you all next time. Until we meet again, be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.